Hey, everybody. What's going on? What's hot? What's hip? What's happening? What is shaking on your Tuesday night? I have been waiting for this forever. We have two very, very, very special guest stars tonight. They are the brilliant minds behind the Rumpled Trench Coat, a Columbo podcast. And they will be joining us in mere seconds. And meantime, please like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell, all of those things that help us with the algorithm, the almighty, all-powerful, all-seeing, all-knowing algorithm. Plus, we do have super chats. We do have memberships. We'd love if you did those things because, Daddy needs a new pair of shoes. And also, please, free gifted memberships sometimes are bestowed upon people. So turn those on. Please turn those on because then you could get a free gifted membership and you could hear things that I'm too scared to put onto the internet on the weekends. So for our members only exclusive programming, Stanley Cross is here. He says, Inspector Columbo. Sadly, I guess I could bring Columbo up. People seem to like Columbo. I might not be able to because thanks StreamYard. There we go. There's Columbo. There he is. All right. Has everybody got their fill of that? I hope so. Because I'm removing it. And I'm going to get ready to have these folks on here in a second. Doc Torn says it is snowing here. Chef is in the house. We love it when he's in the house. And he also is a real chef. I'm sure if we ask them, our guest tonight will tell us that there is. In fact, I know there is because I have a picture of it. There is a celebrity chef episode. It's one of the better episodes, by the way. They're all one of the best episodes. People saying hi. We do have the most cheerful chat room on the internet, as verified by independent sources. And now let's bring him on screen first. You know him. You love him. You can't live without him. Often imitated, never duplicated. He is always a special guest star here in our chat room. But tonight he is on the program. You know him as Rumpled Trench Coat. Tonight we'll be referring to him as Rich. How's it going tonight, sir?
Doing great. Very excited to be here. Thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, and thank you for blowing the dress code on the show.
Well, look, I didn't want to disappoint Wolf. I had to break out the old Rumpled Trench Coat for him.
That's good. And then someone I just met, so to speak, in the back chat room, who is, let's say, the fairer part of this team of incredible geniuses regarding Columbo, and that is Adrian. Adrian, welcome to the show. Look at that smile. That's the best smile we've ever had on the program.
Thank you. Well, it's so nice to be here.
Well, don't thank me. You did all the work. People very happy to see Rumpled Trench Coat. Rich.
Doc.
Dupa is here. She is clapping, and people are saluting. And people are saying hi because we have the most cheerful chat room on the internet. Oh, Adrian's getting some claps from folks.
Thank you. I'll take them.
I told you guys I have a surprise for you. The first surprise is we're not streaming to Facebook right now because StreamYard. But I don't care. Not that many people watch on Facebook. And then people saying hi. But here is the surprise I have for you guys. Just tonight in my Facebook feed, this appeared. And I just went, this is kismet. It's karma. It's amazing. Here we go. Have you guys ever seen this?
That's great. No, I have not. I have not, but that's great.
It just showed up in my feed. And all I could hear was, just one last thing. I noticed all the other people who died wear a red shirt. And this guy, no red shirt. Anyway, I saw that and I thought, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. So anyway,
that's great.
I love it.
Well, it's available, I guess, on Facebook. I'll send it to you.
I like how Spock looks mildly annoyed. Like he's got his hands on his hips like, what are you doing?
Well, he looks like he's going to ground them. Yeah. He looks like someone's going to get in trouble.
And I'm sure you both know, I mean, you can fill in the blank here regarding Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner.
Well, yes, they both were special guest villain murderers on different episodes of Columbo. We did the Leonard Nimoy one because we're doing in chronological order. Is with Stitch in Crime when he was the heart surgeon who wanted to use dissolving sutures. So that was his very, very clever criminal plan.
And then Shatner is the Lucerne one, right?
Yeah, he plays the TV detective, and in that episode, they take a lot of shots at Peter Falk. So it's very funny. When we get to that episode, we'll definitely have a lot to say on that one.
Well, we do have people very excited in the chat room. By the way, I would encourage you guys not to look at the chat.
Okay.
We actually can't see it here on our thing, so I'll have to catch up later on.
I think there's a tab over to the right, maybe.
Is there?
But I would encourage you not.
Okay.
Right.
I will listen.
I personally can't, because when I go on shows, never mind.
Yeah, that's fine. I just don't want anyone to think I'm ignoring them. Yeah.
The Wolf says, "Where are those trench coats?" Well, he's got one. It just happens to be a darker colored one. But
I wore a pleather trench coat, but I think it makes me look more like the Fonz. Like I don't just from like the head up. So I don't know. It fell flat a little bit.
I think you're allowed.
All right.
After all, you're a lady. Stanley Cross, who you can see sometimes on at the Urban Landlord, Stanley versus the World at like 2 a.m. Eastern time. Stanley, are you guys maybe in trouble with YouTube right now? I haven't seen a new show in a while. Terry Nee says, one more. Spock, just one more thing. I noticed your phaser is normally on the right side. The Wolf says, "Hello, Doc, Dupa, Julian, Stanley, Terry, Coat, and the Coat family." Coat family. Terry Nee says, "Highly illogical." Highly illogical. There we go. I don't know what that's all about. People saying hi.
I imagine.
Hey, so, okay, let's just start at the beginning. What made a brother and a sister decide to do any podcast, and why did you decide to team up to do a Columbo podcast?
Well, this started almost 20 years ago as an email exchange. Addie just asked me a simple question about Pokemon because my son at the time was really into that. And I just responded with a Columbo question back because it's a big part of our life. We loved Columbo growing up. And so she answered that Columbo question with a new Columbo question, and we just keep going back and forth. And so a couple of decades passed, and then the internet was invented to the degree that we have it now. And so, everybody and their brother was having a podcast. So literally everybody and their brother thought, well, let's have a podcast. And what else but Columbo? It just was such an important part of our lives growing up. Our mother in particular was a huge fan. Lots of murder in the household.
A lot of murder discussion. A big part of Columbo being on was that we only had one TV in our house when we were all growing up. So pretty much whatever was on was what we were watching. And this was one of the only shows that every single person in the household would watch, right? So we all, as a family, love Columbo. And when we started that email chain, it would carry over to family conversations at holidays. And then our dad would get in on it. And we just sit around talking about which our favorite episodes are, which were the worst, who's the most sympathetic killer, who's not, so that it was really just a conversation that carried over. And Rich offered to do all the hookup things with podcasting. So I was like, sure, okay, I can talk, that I can do.
Well, having trouble figuring out how Adrian's sending emails at 5 years of age 20 years ago. That's another thing.
Look, it's an age gap, but not quite.
It's not. No.
Well, I think a lot of people are from that era that watched it, and you didn't have that many TVs, and even more appropriately, you didn't have that many choices. There just was a couple of 3 channels, unless you wanted to watch documentaries about cheese on PBS. Okay, so you guys are aware of the fact, and I don't think many people are, that Columbo wasn't made for Peter Falk, for television. Columbo is a character that had existed beforehand, right?
Yep. Yeah, Levinson and Link, the two authors, wrote short stories together. They met in middle school, shared a love of Ellery Queen, stayed lifelong friends, but they wrote short stories together. And their first Columbo one was called May I Come In, which I think is a great title for a Columbo story. It was published in Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine as a Dear Corpus Delicti. But ultimately, that short story was turned into a television screenplay for the Chevy Mystery Show. And it starred Bert Freed. You're right. Peter Falk was not the first to play Columbo. And that title was Enough Rope, which I just think is a wonderful title for almost all the best episodes of Columbo. Enough Rope really sums up the whole show. But that was then, and then stop me at any time, but basically that screenplay was then turned into a play, a script for a play, which they then changed the name to Prescription Murder. And so that was in San Francisco. The Columbo in that play was, I always have to look up his name because I always know him as that bumbling guy in It's a Wonderful Life, Thomas Mitchell. So if you picture when you watch It's a Wonderful Life, the guy who gives Potter the $8,000 accidentally, just picture him maybe setting up Potter to say, I noticed that the day we lost 8,000, your bank account went up by 8,000. Could you explain how you got that money?
Yeah.
And
so the show starts. I guess there were two pilots, neither of which did that well. I mean, it's amongst TV files like myself, and Rich knows I'm friends with a lot of other crazy TV people.
Yes.
That is the example that everyone uses for a pilot that didn't really play, but they went ahead with it anyway. Normally, a pilot that doesn't do well is dead in the water, which is probably the title of a Columbo-esque. But this was one that actually got added to the NBC mystery movie lineup, which I don't know if this was the first lineup, but it certainly was like when it stabilized. And I was a fan of all four of these shows. In fact, Heck Ramsey, I'm still upset that they canceled that. That was one of my favorite ones.
Is Heck Ramsey? I don't know.
Yeah, that's
the upper right.
Upper right. That's the one I don't know because it's is it.
And you shouldn't. It was only on 2 seasons, and they took it off. But it was in the mix there with the other ones. And I think Columbo was probably everyone's favorite. McCloud was also very popular, but Columbo was the runaway hit. Now, the beginning of the series, you guys are covering some episodes right now that are amongst my favorites. Yeah. My very favorite episode of them all is Murder by the Book.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And it's such an early episode that it's weird that that's my favorite. But then when you look at who produced it and who wrote it, and who directed it, maybe it's not that weird that that's my favorite one. And it's also kind of interesting. You had 2-writer team created Columbo, and that's somewhat at the basis of that whole episode.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No, that was definitely, I mean, they even called them, we had mentioned now, and now the names escape me, but their names, the actual authors were Levinson and Link, and then the fictional authors also were very similar names. Oh man, I can't believe I'm blanking on it right now. But yeah, what a great episode, obviously written by Baccio and directed by Steven Spielberg. So, if they can't make a good first episode, you might as well just stop right there. But yeah, it was the first episode and an excellent one at that. In fact, they had so much down pat in that episode from very early on that almost all of his mannerisms
Yeah.
and oddities and quirks were there. You had the arrogant murderer who was wealthy but wanted more. You know, everything. If somebody said, "Hey, I'd never seen Columbo before," that's an episode that I usually recommend for people so that they can get into it and get a sense of it. Because if you don't like that episode, you're probably not going to enjoy Columbo.
We even talked about that when we discussed that episode, because it's the first one, but it is so exactly what Columbo is all along. And we even talked about how some first episodes or early seasons of shows aren't that great, and it takes a couple of episodes to find their stride. And this one right away just has everything you would ever want in any episode of Columbo. It's a dynamite episode. I love this one too.
And you're quite right. When I recommend a show, a series to somebody, I rarely can ever get the first episode of a series has to do so much heavy lifting. It's got to establish the characters. It's got to establish the pattern. And this show of all the shows is got its own unique style, its own unique formula that maybe you guys can talk about a little bit. Normally in a mystery, it is a mystery. You don't know. But in Columbo, that wasn't the case.
Well, that's part of what I loved about it, and what I think what people still love about it is that traditionally you had whodunits. You have a dead body, you have a detective, they interview all the suspects, you figure out which one of them did it. But Columbo is more of what they called, and they invented the term basically to describe this type of show, a how catch 'em, which is we, the audience, already knows who did it. We saw them do it. We know why. We know how. Now the only question is, how's the detective going to figure it out? What mistake did the killer make that the detective is going to pick up on? And that's what makes it so unique and different, really, even to this day.
Mm-hmm. No, that's what makes it so cool, because you're along for the ride with the killer. And you might not even know what the motives are going into it. It just, the episode starts off with a murder for the most part. There was one we did, I think it was Suitable for Framing, where the murder takes place in like 13 seconds.
The first few seconds of the film, yes.
And it's just like, all right, I guess we're watching this. But it's very cool, because then you get to see it all unfold, and you're kind of on the other side of things, which is an entirely unique premise for a detective show or a detective story.
I'm so glad you mentioned that one, because Suitable for Framing is probably my number 2 favorite episode. The guy with the art collection and friend that he gaslights and all that.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, there's 2 things about the villains. Well, 3 actually. Superstar actors.
Yeah.
I mean, the top actors you could possibly find. A lot of times, not that unsympathetic. Some of them were unsympathetic, but a lot of times you were like, well, he's not that bad a guy. He just happened to murder somebody.
Pushed a little too far.
And the third thing, all of them, it seems like every single one of them had the perfect murder plan. A lot of mysteries, that's not really the case. There's just a murder that happens and it's just difficult to solve. These people planned. They thought things out. They made a recording and called themselves. They got a satellite. They did all sorts of crazy stuff to make the perfect murder. And there was really only one guy that could have figured it out.
That's it. They'll record subliminal messages. They train dogs. There's so many things that go into this. And then you have the unfortunate luck of having Columbo show up on the scene, because that's it. You're not going to get past them.
It would be good to know before you murdered somebody if Columbo was going to be assigned to the case. Because if he wasn't, you stand a decent chance of getting away with it. If you know he's there, just give up. Save everybody time. It's over.
Right. And, the other thing about it is you get the joy of watching these would-be perfect murderers get increasingly more and more and more annoyed by the and they're happy at first that it's Columbo. It's like, this guy, he probably doesn't know where he left his change, and but little by little, I'd like it when Columbo, he's been this amiable, wow, you must get a lot of these people coming famous, wow, and then eventually he gets serious with it.
Yeah.
He has the conversation where he's like, yeah, somebody did it, and I'm gonna find it. And then you're like, now they know. Now they know that
we call that the Columbo bomb.
Yeah.
There's always one point where he drops a Columbo bomb where it's like, oh, that's funny. If it was me, I would have taken a flight instead of driving 4 hours. Now, if somebody told my wife that I was in an accident, she'd ask how I was, but you didn't do that. So there's always that one point where they're like, ooh, I think I made a mistake.
And it's great because some of the villains are pretty pompous and real condescending from the start. So it is good to watch them pay the price for their obnoxious personality in addition to murdering someone, which isn't great.
Yeah. The Columbo bomb is always I know a lot of guys are from engineering and security. It's an officer. Wouldn't you have known right away? But anyway, who are some of your? I mean, we could go down the list. I mean, you got Academy Award winners on this show.
I know.
Not always the villain. Ray Milland wasn't a villain, but he was, he was a big part of the show. Who are your sort of favorite villains? There's a number of actors that were on more than once, and Patrick McGoohan is one of them, and he also directed, I believe, some episodes.
He did,
and but Robert Culp,
my favorite,
especially in the first episode he appears in, where he's the perfunctory head of the giant security company that's looks down his nose. We use computers here, Lieutenant. We don't leave anyone. And who are your favorite, like, superstar special guest villain?
Oh man, well, I mean, Suitable for Framing actually is my number one episode. So I love Ross Martin in that. And I'd even joke that it seems almost sacrilegious not to choose Robert Culp, Patrick McGoohan, or Jack Cassidy, just because they are like the holy trinity of recurring Columbo villains. But boy, you had Vera Miles. We recorded that episode. We haven't edited or released that yet, but she was in Lovely But Lethal as the kind of cosmetic expert. You'd had so many good villains.
Well, there's Cassavetes.
Yeah.
In that episode also with Blythe Danner, who was just a sort of smaller part. She played his wife, but really every single person they're phenomenal actors. I mean, my favorite for sure is Robert Culp. I love Robert Culp. Yeah. I love Robert Culp villains. I love the 2 episodes he was in the earlier seasons. My favorite episode of all time is The Death Lends a Hand, which is the one you're talking about, where he's the head of the securities agency.
Right.
And he sets up a blackmail that doesn't go his way. And then he just spends the rest of the episode covering up a lot of mistakes he's made.
Yeah. Do you guys find it interesting that it's very gentlemanly, even if it's a female villain, the way when they're caught, they just go along with it.
Yeah.
They just are kind of like, okay, well, you got me. That's it.
And another nod to Suitable for Framing is that when somebody doesn't, it stands out. So like up until the very last second in that episode, Ross Martin was like, no, you saw him put the fingerprints on, and Columbo pulls his hands out and he's wearing gloves, and the episode comes to a hard crash, and the last thing you see is the befuddled face of Ross Martin realizing that he's going to jail, that he's lost it. But yeah, most of the other ones are like, oh, I see. There's no gloating. That's kind of what I like about Columbo. At the end, it's not like, I got you, sucker. It really is like, this was a terrible thing that happened. I've got you. It's over. And yeah, they usually know they've made that one fatal mistake, the killers, and they know it's over, and it's over.
Well, and the one that's on the screen right now with Martin Landau, that's the
double shock. Yes.
Yeah, that one was funny because the ending of that one, one of them took it real well and was just like, all right, I guess you got me. And the other one's like, wait a second. What I didn't say you got me.
The one who's the cooking show host quite literally said, shut up.
Yeah.
because his brother was saying, yeah, what's done is done, I suppose. And he's
but
like,
it is
shut
funny.
up.
Yeah, it's funny because they do sort of they're just resigned to, well, I guess you did get me. But that's what we talk about on our podcast, because you know what? I don't know. We see how Columbo gets them, but we talk about whether that would actually even hold up in court, because there's really no, there's very little proof along the way. There's just a lot of Columbo putting together a puzzle.
But it's also a puzzle that probably a jury would go, oh yeah, that's yeah. I first of all, kudos to you for the term Columbo bomb. That's
all rich.
Freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
Second of all, I love at the ending, like I was referring to earlier. That's when the veneer of the bumbling, my wife, and it's gone. No, sir. What you did. Came in here early in the morning before the housekeeper had a chance to move this stand right here. But the marks were still there. Now, let me ask you, if she left before dinner, how did the piece of rice get in her shoe? I mean, it's just so, he's very matter of fact. He's very, here's a cool thing. One of our very frequent viewers, Metal Maiden Vicky, says, oh, we've covered up Adrian. We can't have that. There'll be none of that here on the she says, Tom knows this, but Peter Falk is from my home.
Oh, that's very cool.
That is cool.
Metal Maiden Vicky also, she has her own show, Metal Maiden Vicky's Metal Euphoria, on Sonic Asylum Radio every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Nailed it. She says, I want to start watching Columbo from episode 1 so I can check out Rumpled podcast and follow along, kind of like
thank you.
After watching The Walking Dead, The Talking Dead.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, only better. And where can they watch this for free right now? I always keep mixing it up.
Oh, you can see Columbo for free on the Tubi right now. It's some commercials there, but have you got other sources ads?
Yeah, if you have Amazon Prime, it is on
It is
there.
part of that.
So that's not really free, but if you're paying for Amazon Prime, it's included, so you can watch it there too.
Let's see here. We've got what the fuck? Hey, we'll have none of that talk on this show. I like the Roddy McDowell. Oh, I love that one.
Short fuse. Yeah.
I love Roddy McDowell in general. I love him. But that episode was hilarious to talk about. I'll say this. This is one thing we've learned by talking about the show on a podcast instead of just having casual conversations, on email and stuff, is that sometimes when you're just watching it, it's really enjoyable and you just go along for the ride. But when you have to talk about a plot, and that one in particular, the Roddy McDowell episode, was a beast to dissect. There were so many. Columbo's hardly even in that one. It's really all Roddy McDowell, which is great because who doesn't love Roddy McDowell?
Right.
But that one was impossible to talk about. We started and stopped that one how many times, Rich?
Oh, we fully recorded 2 episodes until we said, okay, wait a minute, we're going to do it one more time, and then we're going to abandon the episode if we couldn't. And so we did finally get that up. But it was so convoluted and twisted and turning. And fun fact about that while we're talking about that one is that was never supposed to exist. That was part of season 1, and Columbo was such a huge hit that the producers wanted one more episode of Columbo to kind of squeeze it in that first season. So that script was rushed out and put together. And, again, fantastic to watch. I mean, the murder weapon's an exploding cigar.
Yeah.
So
yes. And I have been on one of those trams. It was in Albuquerque. Never doing that again.
I don't blame you.
That whole thing is going on. I'm just like, that's another. It's impossible. They're all my favorite episodes.
I know they are all so good. They are all so good.
They're just more favorite than others.
Yeah.
Lava Q says Columbo had 2 series. One of my favorites was Identity Crisis, a spy drama. I know nothing about that, but I think that's because that's one of the newer
series. You had the original classic run,
And then
and then they were brought
ABC.
back. Yes, exactly, to ABC, where they made, I guess they were more technically movies as opposed to part of a series. And yeah, Identity Crisis was one of them, and it was definitely one of the better newer ones. I tend to mostly only consider the ones from the 70s, as I think a lot of people do when they think of classic Columbo, but there were definitely some gems in the new, and in the bring back. Yeah,
Lava Q says he owns both complete series on DVD.
Nice.
Wow.
that's
Well
great.
done to you, sir.
I think Robert Culp did one in the 90s, didn't he?
I believe he did. I know Patrick McGowan did 2.
Okay.
In addition to the 2 he did in the classic. So he wins. He got to do 4, and I think everybody else, Robert Culp and Jack Cassidy did 3 each in the original series.
Well, this one will be easy for you guys to answer.
Oh yeah, no, he's a detective. He's a lieutenant in the homicide department at Los Angeles LAPD, which is kind of fun because, like, Murder, She Wrote, also by Levinson and Link, who made this, that's more of a traditional whodunit. I didn't care for it quite as much because I really am kind of addicted to the How Catch 'Em, but there always had to be an excuse as to why Jessica Fletcher happened to be solving a murder as a mystery writer, whereas this was literally his job. It's like, hey, I'm Lieutenant Columbo.
Yeah.
You kind of have to listen to me, even though I'm going to pretend that it's your idea or that you're allowing me. You kind of have to. Even if you kick me out of the house, I will come back. And he does allow himself to get kicked out of the house an awful lot.
Well, they always had to orchestrate some weird, she's at a book authors convention, or she just went on vacation or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not as big a fan of that one either. Lucas Malago says, Tom Gully got me to check out Tubi. This is not an ad. People saying hi. Lava here, who seems to be quite a fan of the program, says, I'm old enough to have seen Columbo series when they both were originally broadcast. All of us are, except Adrian. The other thing I would like to say is like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell, all the free things that you can do. Won't cost you a farthing. Help us with the algorithm, super chats, memberships, and turn on your gifted memberships. But also, and this is very important, everyone, right this second, in the description for this show is the link to the Rumpled Trench Coat, a Columbo podcast YouTube page. You must, this is not a request, this is an order. You must go there right now and subscribe. You have no other choice. That's the cost of admission. If you don't do that, Santa is not going to bring you anything any year. You're not getting anything ever.
That's it.
Let's see here. People said it's showing their age. It had McGowan in Spy Drama, which is quite appropriate. 1975. Well, we got some big experts.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And you know what? I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. Identity Crisis was the one with Leslie Nielsen as the victim to Patrick McGowan. I was thinking of a later episode.
And there's one where Leslie Nielsen is the boyfriend of the killer, who is Susan Clark, which I love.
Another wonderful episode.
That's a great episode.
Lady in Waiting, just a wonderful episode. She was terrific. I really like a lot of the female murderers. I wish there were even more of them. They all did such a all the killers did a great job, but in particular, I don't know, they just everybody did great. Here's another one, A Friend Indeed. That was which also satisfies my love for puns, because it's a friend indeed, as in activities or actions, instead of the word indeed. So this was the essentially Strangers on a Train episode, where the gentleman on the left is the police commissioner who helped his friend cover up a murder that was an accidental death. He accidentally killed his wife, but then it was like, oops, son of a gun. I really only meant to strangle her half to death, and unfortunately I was too efficient. But then in exchange for his friend helping the commissioner cover up the death of his wife that he's about to commit, great episode. Again, as all of them are, but
a lot of helicopter shots in that episode.
Yes,
a lot of
they kind of went
helicopter
all.
action.
They kind of went all out.
I don't know if they just were like, we have the helicopter for this shot, for this shooting, so we're just going to use it all the time.
Well, if I could point out, there's two things. This is going to be such a great episode to show I'm never going to have grandkids, but still other people's grandkids, I'll just randomly show up at their house and go. But Columbo is extremely special in terms of the music.
Yeah.
They had specific music composed for each episode, which is extremely not done, especially at this time.
Right.
Yeah.
It was cool too, then, because when you would see, you were talking about the facade dropping and he's no longer like this bumbling, disheveled detective. They always hit you with the music then. There was a lot of 1970s score accompanying that moment. A
lot of piano chord strumming, not keys being played, but that din, 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 din. And yes, they had a lot of really great music, like you said, Tom. The different themes per episode, and Addie, you and I were talking about it. That they really essentially treated all of these Mystery Wheel specials or shows as movies.
Yes.
And so they put a lot of money into it, a lot of budget went into it. And you can tell, because really, I mean, Columbo, yes, of course it's dated. Of course they're wearing 70s clothes. We talk about it almost every single episode, but
the fashion's my favorite.
But they still hold up. They really still hold up to this day.
Well, and then a lot of people see there's been a resurgence of Columbo fans in the last 5 years or so. Mm-hmm. And everyone talks about the fact these still hold up. I have the first couple seasons of McCloud, and I love McCloud, but not as much production value there. Mm. There are horrifyingly bad helicopter shots of New York that you think in the pilot, they just had to use that. No, they keep using it throughout the series, the exact same one. So it's just not as much. Lava says he's got to go. How often does this show broadcast? Have a pleasant evening all. Thanks for the shout out, Tom Gully. No problem. Go ahead and subscribe. It's on every night. If you have trouble getting to sleep, it is the world's only known for insomnia. Let's see here. I think we missed Quincy. Now, Quincy was never part of the NBC mystery movie. Let's see. It was wild to see Jack Klugman as Oscar Madison, then as Quincy. Yes. Now, this is something I enjoy, the empathy scale segment on the Rumpled podcast using Dick Van Dyke and Ruth Gordon. Now, this brings me to my next question.
Okay.
And you guys are the perfect people to ask this. I may know the answer.
Okay.
But I will pretend as if I may not know the answer.
Okay.
So that you can tell it better than I will. Was there anyone that Columbo did not catch?
Ooh.
Well, I'm going to say technically yes.
Yeah.
But we know that he really did, and I'm sure you're thinking of the episode, The Forgotten Woman, or Forgotten Lady, rather.
Is that Janet Leigh?
It's Janet Leigh, and I love that they did this, because every great fictional detective has played God at least once. And in that episode, she kills her husband because he doesn't want to produce the play or movie, I forget which, we haven't seen that in a while, because he knows that she has an aneurysm, but she doesn't. And so he's afraid that the movie would kill her if she tried to do it. So she thinks he's holding her back. So long story short, not to spoil the whole episode, but at the very end, she doesn't even know that she did it. The aneurysm has affected her memory. She only has probably about 6 months to live. And that's when her dear friend said, no, Columbo, because he was going to arrest her. He said, no, I did it. And Columbo said, well, we know you didn't do it. And it'll just break down. The case will break down. And the friend said, well, could it at least take 6 months? And that's when Columbo says, yeah, It could take 6 months. And so he essentially let her off the hook. So
Yeah.
yes, if that's what you're alluding to, that is definitely a case where he didn't catch the killer, so to speak.
It's exactly what I was alluding to.
I figured.
Doc Torn, thank you so much for the $5. I appreciate it. Sadly, you've covered up Adrian, which we won't allow on this program, but can't take orders too frozen from the snow. That's okay, Doc Torn. Thaw out. Thaw out. And again, thank you for the $5. I think a lot of people really did like that Ruth Gordon episode.
Oh, well, she's so great. And she's so Ruth Gordon in everything she does, whether it's Rosemary's Baby or Harold and Maude or this Columbo episode. She's just so likable. And her murder is so kind of justified.
Yeah, that well,
You know?
look, there's a reason why we put her on the good end of the
Yes.
sympathy scale and Dick Van Dyke at the most vicious end. And Dick Van Dyke is at the most vicious end because he doesn't just kill his wife, he ties her up and then lectures her for 2.5 minutes about how happy he is to murder her and how awful she is. And it's just the most awful thing you've ever seen. And I had commented, he saved a lot of killers from being stuck on that high end of the scale because nobody was really worse than him.
It's awful.
But Ruth Gordon is very sympathetic because, yes, she didn't have kids. She had a niece. She raised that niece like a daughter. That was definitely a daughter to her. That daughter's fiance took her out on a boat. And I guess like Natalie Wood, they went out on a sailing trip and she never came back.
No.
And so Ruth Gordon assumed that he had killed her, and therefore this was a revenge for that. And so it was really, she was a very sympathetic killer. My only issue with that is the method she chose to kill him was really horrific. She locked him in a safe until he suffocated and died. It's just the most awful
Well,
thing.
he should think about what he did.
He had enough time to think about how he drowned her loved ones. So yes, but that's the sympathy scale.
Yeah.
We rate every killer on a scale of sympathetic to least sympathetic.
A lot of them fall right in the middle.
Right.
And then sometimes I take it personally when they're so obnoxious. So I rate them very low on the sympathy meter.
Well, and that's another brilliant thing about your show. I love the sympathy meter. I really do. And I think we've already answered this. I'm going to go ahead and put Columbo up here.
There we go.
I think we've already answered this. Hey, Tom and friends, happy to be here. H2BH2U. I've only seen short snippets of Columbo. Do you all have a must-see episode to get me introduced?
I would again start from the very first
Me too.
actual episode called Murder by the Book. It's an excellent episode, and honestly, it'll give you a great sense of whether the show is for you or not. If you like that, you're going to absolutely like it. If for some reason you don't care for it, honestly, it's just simply not for you. But I would start with Murder by the Book. I think that's a great place to start.
I would say if you can find it, and I don't know that even any copies of it exist, but the crossover episode with Star Trek called Just One More Thing is extremely good, but it's very difficult to find on the platforms, unfortunately. Let's see here.
I can't believe that showed up on your feed today. That's so funny.
Oh yeah, Harold and Maude. Obviously, Ruth Gordon's so great in that.
Yeah.
What's this? I'm so poor I had to go to low school because I couldn't afford high school. Let's see here. I think that's about all we have right now. Gilman says, definitely going to rewatch the entire series. Forgotten a lot over the years. Thanks, Rich and Adrian, for your passion. Yes.
Thank you, Gilman.
Thank you so much. You guys are doing just an incredible show, and way more people need to be turned on to it because it is fabulous. If you really like Columbo, and by the way, if you've never seen Columbo, you're going to like Columbo. And what of his sort of stock and trade Columbo stuff? You've got obviously the Rumpled Trench Coat. You've got the really awful cheap cigars.
The cigars.
You've got the Peugeot, the terrible car that he drives around in. And I didn't notice this until I'd watched the show for a long time. He sometimes begins to whistle.
Yeah.
This old man.
That's it.
As a matter of fact, that we're
up to that episode.
Now recording that episode, Any Old Port in a Storm with Donald Pleasance, which is my number 2 favorite episode ever.
Okay.
But yes, while calling the Weather Bureau, because back then that's how you had to get the weather report going back a bit, Columbo was just kind of waiting for the call, and Peter Falk just ad-libbed whistling This Old Man because that's a tune that he likes, and it just kind of came out while he was waiting to talk to the person on the phone. And then that became a shortcut to, oh, the pieces are starting to fall into place.
Right.
Or as our folks would say, oh, you're dead now. When he starts whistling that, it's like, oh, you're screwed.
It's all over.
That's it. Just give up.
Do you know what he also does a lot of that I didn't know at all until we started doing this podcast is he shows up eating a hard-boiled egg a lot. Like a lot. And I'm not sure why that's part of his shtick, but like we know about the dog, his rumpled trench coat, the cigar, but he does at a lot of crime scenes. He's showing up eating eggs.
Well, and getting shells all over the place. And of course, in A Stitch in Crime, he the murder weapon was a tire. Yeah. The murder weapon was a tire iron. And he says, hold that up for a second, and cracks the egg on the tire iron. So he's cracking an egg on the murder weapon. So, clearly just obviously Peter Falk had lived. But I was kind of surprised how many times he's got hard-boiled eggs in his pocket for some reason.
One of my favorite Columbo moments, and I don't know if you guys have another one. It's from a very early episode. It could be the first one for all I know. He's at a golf course and he's talking to a caddy or a pro there. I forget which one.
Right.
And he, from whatever happens, he gets to take a tee shot.
Yeah.
And he's acting like he never touched a golf club in his life. And he just laces one right down the thing.
Yeah.
I played at a public course, or whatever. And it's this thing that he does where he pretends he's not good at something, or he pretends that he has no knowledge of it. And then all of a sudden, bam.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Well, that's what I love about that scene is that he usually gets people thrown off their guard by making them think he's worse at something than he is. And in this one, he throws them off guard. He uses the excuse, because he is a golf pro, to say, hey, could you show me a lesson? Because I don't know how to play this game. And he catches the guy in some obvious blatant lies. And he says, look, I'm no good at this game, after he hit like a 400-yard drive straight down the middle into the fairway. But, I'm good at my job. So talk to a lawyer. Basically stop lying to me, because I know you're lying. So shut up and save yourself here. But that's great. And it is a great scene, because he really, it's one of the few times we get to see him really excel at something. And the golf pros looking at Columbo and that shot like, wow, I don't know what's going on. I don't know which way is up here.
That's from Death Lends a Hand. And that's the episode where I think we started saying this, that Columbo, everything's intentionally to throw people off. And so we always say, like, he's playing chess and everyone else is playing checkers. He's so many moves ahead, and everything he does is so intentional. So that is, it's unusual for him to show such competency at anything he does intentionally in the beginning.
That's true.
Well, the other thing I love that he does in a lot of episodes is, if there's something he doesn't know, he will go to a guy in a recording studio or the guy at the power plant or whatever it is and go, let me ask you, is it possible to route this way, or show me how you turn this on? Or, he gets somebody to show him something or to answer a question that kind of plays in to his solution.
Yes. And a lot of times he'll even have a fear that he overcomes by the end of the episode. In short fuse, when they first take that tram up the first time, Columbo is paralyzed, sweating, staring, can't even speak. And meanwhile, the sheriff is like, hey, take a look over here and see that 2,500-foot drop. Yeah, check it out. You'll like this. Lots of jagged stones and rocks that you could fall on if you. And by the end of the episode, he's sitting there calmly while Roddy McDowell is panicking, trying to throw out what he thinks is a bomb to get it out of that thing. So he'll be seasick in the beginning and then be fine later on, afraid of heights, but he'll get in an airplane. You know, he'll have these fears that he will absolutely overcome later in the episode.
Have you guys, by the way, I went on the tram that goes up the Sandia Mountains. I'm terrified of heights to begin with, but it's much quicker than driving up the mountain. There's a restaurant at the top. And so I'm on there with my friend, and I am literally, sweat is pouring down my face. And that's when the person that's doing the sort of the tour goes, if you look to the right, you can see the wreckage of American Airlines Flight 727. What? Wreckage? No, not cool. Do you guys, and I haven't really looked into this a lot, but I feel like I should. Do you guys have any information or any kind of knowledge? Peter Falk is an amazing actor, always has been. The In-Laws, one of my favorite movies ever. He and Janet Leigh actually did a movie together. It may have been a made-for-TV movie where they were both people with terminal illnesses. And they they fall in love and start going on a bucket list thing together. It's an amazing film, film. And what an actor. Do you guys have any knowledge as to sort of his approach to playing Columbo?
I don't know about his approach. I do know what other people said about it. And this I thought was fascinating. And that is that the head writers would always tell any new writers, don't write the mannerisms. The mannerisms are all Peter Falk. If you write the mannerisms and then Peter Falk exaggerates them, it'll be too much and over the top. So if you wrote, checks his pocket for a pen, I mean, he always just does this anyway. So if you write to do that more, it'll come out really forced. So they said, Peter Falk is Columbo. Columbo is Peter Falk. And that's how you should approach it. All you have to write is Columbo looks for a pen, or Columbo talks to the witness and tells him all about that. But you can't, you don't want to write stage direction or anything like that, because that's all Peter Falk.
Is it true that either his coat or the car were actually his?
The coat was definitely his. In fact, all of his clothes were his. The coat, the suit, the tie, the shoes, that was all Peter Falk's. All. The car was definitely not his. I think, Addie, you would.
Yeah, he picked that out on the lot. I think like the day before shooting, wasn't it? Like really down to the wire.
It was really last second.
Yeah, and that was not his. That was a studio car. Yeah.
Okay. Doc X question here, Doc Torn. Y'all think Peter Falk ever ad-libbed any lines?
All of them.
he ad-libbed quite a few. A lot of his, dramatic cut-ups where he would have, he's about to tell the killer and he'd say, I found out something very interesting. I think you'd like to know. Is that a Steinway? All those little distractions. That was all Peter Falk ad-libbing to intentionally throw off the killer actor, whoever's acting with, so that their annoyance and impatience would get even more realistic. So
they're legitimately flustered. Or sometimes you'll see him crack up other people. They'll just start laughing at him.
They'll just start laughing.
And they'll cut away it real quick. Yeah. Sometimes you can notice that.
The famous one that everyone thinks of when they talk about Columbo is, how much did you pay for those shoes?
Yeah.
That was a complete ad lib that completely threw off the actor at the time, which was that was The Most Dangerous Game, I think.
That was the Dean Stockwell was the victim. Robert Culp was the murderer. Yeah.
As the ding-a-ling ice cream salesman as a disguise.
See, Culp is a great murderer. I love Culp.
Yeah, he's really fantastic.
I like the episodes where, excuse me, the villain almost wants to be social with Columbo.
Yes.
Well, it's like, you should come out on my boat, or perhaps we'll do this sometime. And sometimes they actually do. And it leads me to I was sickness. I wonder which of the villains would have been friends with Columbo if they had just met him. Because he's got that kind of charm. He's got that kind of, since you seem to be interested, like even Ross Martin. I couldn't tell the difference between this. I've got some velvet dogs playing cards. And he's it's a matter of interpretation and the scope of work and blah, blah, blah. They actually seem to want to bring Columbo into their world.
Yes. Again, so much so that when they don't, it stands out, like in Lawrence Harvey in the chess episode, the most dangerous match, I guess. Columbo kept trying and he kept getting shut down. It's like, I'd love to learn how to play this game. Well, take a correspondence course and walk away. But yes, a lot of them absolutely, I think would be at least friendly. Possibly some of them would be friends. I really think that Carsini from Any Old Port in a Storm would probably have been drinking buddies with him. I mean, they really had a great, chemistry together. But it's tough to say because, he is kind of putting on a front and they are too. It's a killer.
Yeah.
So it's tough to say. Johnny Cash is another one where at the end you could tell there was a real, mutual affection for each other. But, that probably not a lot, but maybe a little more than you would think.
I think Columbo legitimately liked the, I forgot her name. Now I can't remember her name in the show, but the Anne Bancroft's one.
Where yes.
I think he really was a fan of her.
Old-Fashioned Murder, right?
No, the one where she's
Anne Bancroft. No, Requiem for a Falling Star.
Yeah.
Yes.
That one. I think he really was a fan
of her.
He
was starstruck, like you said. He was
starstruck.
Legitimately a fan of hers. Yeah.
But I also wonder if a lot of these villains are kind of know-it-all blowhards anyway. And if they're just sort of they just sort of treat everybody like that, like, all right, I'll teach you how to do this. I don't know.
Yeah, I think probably you could go case by case. Yeah, there we go, Gil. That's right.
Wow, that's the Columbo bomb. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, there's another thing, and I'm going to see if you guys have a term for it. Chris Cheshire, thank you for joining us, Chris. Says, I got married in 1971 and my wife flew to Nashville. In the taxi, the woman driver kept looking at me. When we got to the hotel, she said the ride was free if I gave her an autograph. I did. Did she think you were Peter Falk? You got a little of that look to you. You could just do this in your avatar, but that's a great story. Is there a thing I've noticed in a lot of the episodes? At first, the villain is sort of helpful or trying to, at least get their side of the story, true story, across to Columbo. So it's part of the misdirection that leads to them getting away with perfect murder. At a certain point, there comes a point with all of them, no matter how chummy they are, no matter what, that they do the, Lieutenant, your constant interruptions are starting to become just a little too much. Now, I've answered all your questions. I've done this. I've done that. If you have anything else to say, speak to my lawyer or whatever it is. Is you guys planning on coming up with a name for that?
What could we call that? The exasperation zone? I don't know. That's kind of what it is.
That is totally what it is. That is totally what it is.
It's the enough already. The talk to
no
my
more
lawyer.
One more thing.
Yeah,
no more one more thing.
No more
Keep
one more
walking.
thing. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. No. You brought the Susan Clark one. She has a really good one because that's the one where Lady in Waiting, where I love this episode. She starts off kind of mousy and timid, and she commits the murder, and she has a full makeover. She is completely transformed physically, emotionally, and she becomes very assertive. So I don't think she would have talked to Columbo like that in the beginning of the episode, but she sure does near the end.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we talked about that. I have to confess, after all this time, that there's no way in the world she's getting caught. So that one's not standing. That one's not standing up in court, because a coroner had ruled that the death was misadventure. So Columbo shouldn't have even been allowed to show up at her house,
just
much less
hassling
do
her,
all
yeah.
of that. But yes, toward the end, she's like, "Look, I've answered, like you said, I've answered your questions.
Yeah.
I've done everything you'd said. We've gone through all of this. I'm not." There wasn't even technically a crime committed according to the
Right.
court of law. Get out of here.
Right.
leave me alone.
I have no idea
so-
what this means. Push the button, Max. Favorite line.
Oh, that's that I do know that one. Isn't that the robot one?
Maybe.
Oh, could be.
Chris
We
will
haven't
tell
quite
us.
gotten to that one, yes. But yeah, push the button, Max.
That sounds
Let's see
familiar.
here. Ransom for a Dead Man when Faye Grant and Columbo interplane flying. That looks-
Yes. Well, that was the second so-called pilot. That was the second movie. And yeah, that was that was very good too. That actually, it's funny because Prescription Murder was, of course, based on a play
Right.
that they made into the teleplay. So it very much felt like a play. You had long scenes with two people sitting in chairs talking to each other. You have it culminated. I think the only outdoor scene is the one you have for your background, which is the swimming pool.
Yeah.
Which was very clever as to how Columbo caught the killer. Again, Enough Rope, which was the original title. He got the killer to get himself.
Yeah.
But yes, Ransom for a Dead Man, they went the whole opposite way because they were hoping to get a series out of it. So huge budget, lots of airplane scenes, lots of outdoor scenes, different sets all over the place. So yes, that was one where he was in her airplane.
I think this is a great question. In your opinion, saddest episode?
Well, I mean, I would have to say The Forgotten Lady is the saddest because she killed her husband when he was just trying to save her life. So the motive was sad. She herself is dying of an illness and didn't even know that she's guilty. So I would have to say that's my vote for the saddest episode.
I think that is the saddest one, but I also would put the Ruth Gordon one in there.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to see her get locked up.
Yeah.
And she's so great.
Well, she does say what may be the most thoughtful line, and that is what we kind of joked about earlier, is I wish you had investigated my daughter's disappearance or my niece's, death. Because if he did, he probably would have caught the fiance and that death wouldn't have been necessary. So I always wonder how many killers get away with it because Columbo can only work on one case at a time.
Yeah. And I often wonder what his caseload was like. Like when he was doing this one, was he also figuring out some really easy to solve ones? I'm wondering what episode you guys think is the one that Columbo was in the most danger. I never feel like he's dealing with these devious, not just murderers, devious murderers who in many
highly
cases,
intelligent.
Physically, now some of them they're smart enough to make the person, walk into an elevator or whatever. They don't physically kill them, but I believe there's one where a guy gets beaten with a weight. And
that's like the Adonis Jack LaLanne one.
Yes, Robert Conrad. Yeah,
I love that one.
Yeah, Robert Conrad. And by the way, if I'm going to get beaten to death by a guy, Robert Conrad had a hit TV show in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, and in the 80s. And he's knock this off. I dare you. I don't want it to be Robert Conrad. I want it to be Richard Kiley or somebody. I want it not to be Robert Conrad. But I never feel, or at least to my memory, I don't recall ever feeling like Columbo himself was in danger. Now, I've seen Columbo take his gun out. So I know he has one. But
he doesn't normally carry a gun. He's used a gun a couple of times for ballistic tests or for printing or things like that, but they make a point of him not only not carrying a gun, but the fact is he almost got in trouble because he went an entire year past when he was supposed to take the qualifying shooting test and ultimately bribed somebody else to do it for him. But yeah, there were a couple of times he was in danger. I like that they didn't do it often because that's kind of a little, I won't say cheap, but it felt a little more like other detective action shows.
This is
And
not an action show. Yeah.
No. And the times that he was in danger, it was an intelligent kind of danger. It was, well, Lady in Waiting, I mean, she pulled a gun on him. She pointed a gun at him, and she was going to use the same excuse she was using for her brother. Oh, I thought it was an intruder, and just shoot him. And he talked her out of that just simply by saying, you got too much class to do that.
I was going to say, he didn't talk her out of it. He gave her one compliment and completely diffused the situation.
The only compliment she must have gotten in her entire life.
Say, that poor character, she didn't get any attention from anybody. So that's all it took.
Let's see here. Chris Cheshire, who obviously knows this show very well, he said, in Ransom, didn't the actress who played the daughter die right after that episode?
No, I don't know. I mean, she may have died sometime since then, but she actually did a few other projects after that. So I don't know how soon afterward that might have happened. But I don't believe it was right afterwards. Now, one who did, and this was kind of a fun fact.
I know this one.
Yes. Okay.
It's Murder by the Book, right?
It is Murder by the Book. You're absolutely right. And so to give you an idea, this is kind of fun. So this was our first episode that we taped. It was the first episode of Columbo, and you know how at the end we pretend to interrupt each other by saying one more thing and do a little fun fact about the episode.
Awesome. You guys are so great. I love it.
Thank you. Well, her one more thing. Her fun fact at the end of the episode was the actress who played Lucerna, or what?
Masenka.
Thank you,
Barbara Colby.
Yes. Got murdered in a drive-by gang shooting.
She was murdered in real life. It was awful. Yeah. But I
and I'm just laughing because
I know. It just completely deflated the entire conversation. We're like, hey, jokey, we love Columbo. And I'm like, anyway, this woman was murdered. And
they never found her killer.
No, it's unsolved.
And so like my jaw,
not nice.
Luckily I had enough chins to cushion my jaw falling, but
I believe it's her sister still runs a Facebook page. That's dedicated to her. And as you say, they never found out what happened.
No.
And incidentally, she is brilliant in that episode.
Oh no, she was fantastic. We praised her up one side and down the other. She had to convey such a range of emotions. There's one point where she is both extorting and blackmailing Jack Cassidy, the murderer, so that she wouldn't go to the police, but at the same time flirting with him and thinking she's falling in love, but at the same time knowing she can't trust him because she's blackmailing him for murder. And she conveys all of it, and she just did I really feel she kind of stole the episode a little.
She did steal the episode. She was an up-and-coming actress. She showed up in a lot of shows around that time, and that's why I looked into her. I'm like, whatever happened to her? Because she's so great.
She was so good.
And that's why that was my one more thing, because I looked into that actress. I was like, oh, how awful. So I'm like, here's a fact. And I'm like, oh, that's a sad fact to just discuss right now.
Not quite the tone we wanted to set in the very first episode. So we cut that,
and I did a different one.
Yeah.
Well, when she first meets him, she's this starstruck rube, like a pesky fan. I know you guys, like myself, because of our, well, let's just say somewhat spectacular internet presence. We're constantly being besieged with fans and well-wishers. And sometimes you're in a hurry. You're trying to get to the mountain cabin. You're buying steaks. And you just don't want to put up with another. I love all your books. I can't wait for the next one. And then later on, as you say, she kind of looks at him as welcome to my parlor, said the spider to the fly.
Yeah.
And I think you guys captured it perfectly in that she wants him. She fancies herself the amour of this famous writer, and she wants to blackmail him into stuff, but she can't get away from that emotional part of it. And of course, Jack Cassidy with that $1 million smile and just such a charming rat.
Yeah,
I mean,
charming rat's a great way to describe him. Yeah,
I mean, he's such a charming rat. Chris Cheshire also says Patty Maddock played the daughter and died in 2003. She played Margaret.
Oh.
Okay, this is an interesting question from Gilman. Who is a distant second detective, Beretta, Rockford, or Kojak?
Boy, of those three, I might have to go with Rockford.
You can pick your own second best if you want. I would definitely be in the Rockford camp.
Yeah.
I have the entire series of Rockford, love Rockford. There's just something very regular guy that kind of like, I got this job. I'm a detective. I could have gotten a job painting houses, but this is what I got. And I'm Rockford is all about being a little bit relentless, but more a student of human nature,
right?
And wise to everyone's tricks. That is a nice question. Who would you pick, Adrian? Is your second
I didn't
favorite?
watch any of those other shows, but in terms of like all TV, I would put like Adrian Monk. I was a big Monk fan.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Adrian Monk, and then Psych also.
Oh, I loved Psych.
Psych
was hilarious.
Well, Psych was such a comedy too that it was really, really, really great. I love Psych. What do you think Columbo's number one attribute was in terms of solving crimes? What was his greatest strength, do you think? And we can go down the list. His ability to disarm people, his ability to obfuscate what he's actually trying to do, his attention to detail, his relentlessness. What is it that made him? I know it's easy to say, well, it's kind of a stew, but what do you think is his number one thing?
I would have to go with relentlessness, because part of that is his ability to just say, okay, there's 13 books that these two authors wrote. I'm going to take the weekend and read all 13 of them. I'm going to learn how to do this. I'm going to learn this skill from scratch just because I'm relentless at it. He's got to do what he will do. He has to do what he has to do, and he's not stopping. There's nothing that's going to stop him. He will get to the truth. And all the other ones, fantastic skills, and they're all important, but that's my vote, is relentlessness. How about you, Ed?
I think that whatever you want to call this, where it has to make sense to him, and if it doesn't, he can't let that go. So whatever you want to call that missing piece, it just has to logically make sense to him. And if it doesn't, and usually that's when he's fixating on that, that's when all the puzzle pieces come together. So if I'm trying to think, like in Double Shock, it didn't make sense to him that the murder victim would have exercised, taken a shower, and then exercised again. He couldn't get past it. And most people kind of just washed over it. All the other detectives or the policemen that were on the scene just, breezed past it. But it bothered him so much. It was this little feeling, it stuck in him. And whatever that is, whether that's like super observant, that it has to make sense to him before he can let it go.
It's the little piece of sand in the oyster that makes the pearl.
Yeah.
I think that Chris Cheshire says attention to detail. I guess that's part of it. And plays into what you're both saying. So that's a great answer. I also love it when he'll say, at first I thought it had to be the tires.
Yeah.
And I started thinking. It's like at first I thought this one thing, like we all did.
Yeah.
I would have thought that. And then it's because there's a genius in the how catch 'em.
Yeah.
We know what happened.
Right.
And we don't know how he's going to prove it, because many times it seems impossible to even us. It's perfect. It's a perfect crime. There's no way anybody could ever figure this out. And so when he starts revealing how he proves it, it's always great, because he's misdirected. He's playing us like he does the murderer.
Yes.
He's like, originally, and maybe all of his investigation, maybe all of his questions are pointing in this one area. And then I decided, it's not about what was in the music box. I looked over here in the tray, and it's just, oh my God, why didn't I think of that?
Right. Or it's like not hearing the bells chime.
Yes.
That's what does it,
That was particularly frustrating. But yes, it's the what should have happened
Yeah.
but didn't, and that's a detail that almost nobody's going to think of. Why would you notice the absence of a clock chiming when it should have, if he was there at the time he said he was going to be?
Of the supporting characters, like Leslie Nielsen as Susan Clark's boyfriend, which, by the way, Susan Clark, highly underrated actress across the board.
Absolutely fantastic in that episode,
and
particular.
Just amazing in that episode. Ray Milland as was he the father or something? Or
he was
a killer
husband.
Too.
That's it.
He was a killer and a husband.
Yes.
But there's oftentimes a second party who's not the killer. That's a great character. Many times, sometimes they're the person that they think that's been framed or whatever.
Right.
Do you have a favorite amongst those people?
I mean, it's got to be Vincent Price, just because I love Vincent Price so much. But in Lovely But Lethal, he was the competing cosmetic company head, and so he was definitely a supporting actor in that he clearly was a potential suspect. Who wasn't a killer or a victim. So, I mean, if the question, if it's ever what's your favorite, the answer's always got to be Vincent Price.
That's
for
fair.
me. I just a huge lifelong fan of Vincent Price. But boy, there were a lot of really good ones of those. He had Ida Lupino, who is a victim, and then also the widow of the guy who was blown up by a cigar box in short fuse. You had really just colossal stars. Don Amici is a lawyer.
Yes.
You just almost every episode you could just rattle and just all these stars would come falling out of the box. It's just really amazing who they were able to get on these shows, even in the smaller roles.
Who was the actress that played Goldie? She was my favorite, and I don't even know her name. Wasn't that Forrest Tucker that was killed in that one?
Forrest, yes, it was Blueprint for Murder.
Yeah,
that was the only episode that Peter Falk directed.
Okay.
Blueprint for Murder.
Her actor. I can't believe I'm
what
blanking
else
on her
is
name.
she in?
I don't know. I have to look her up, but she was great. She was fun.
No, she was terrific.
She stole the show, I thought.
Yeah. We compared Forrest Tucker to Yosemite Sam, but then we called her Bugs Bunny because she was just running around kissing everybody and just bouncing all over the room.
SG fanboy here with us.
SG,
big favorite. Big favorite. In fact, the gentleman who, for good or for bad, created the Columbo graphic. So blame him or praise him as you will. This
amazing
is
stuff.
Really, really good question. How many episodes was Patrick McGoohan in? And before you answer that, which I know you will, Patrick McGoohan was a notoriously difficult person to work with. Now, I don't find him difficult myself. He was just very, very demanding. He wanted things to be just so. And if you were that way, nobody had problems with him. But if you weren't that way, yes, he would be very difficult. Of course, legendary for The Prisoner, which was a show of extreme caliber. He also was a fan of Columbo so much that he was very passionate about directing episodes of Columbo as well. So how many episodes? Janice Page, it says here.
Thank you.
Janice Page.
Chris Cheshire.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
The major goods tonight. Thank you for joining us, Chris. And please, Chris, in the description is the actual link to the YouTube page for Rumpled Trench Coat, a Columbo podcast. And everybody must subscribe.
That's
everyone right now. But how many episodes was he in?
So he was in 2 of the classic episodes by Dawn's Early Light, where he played the head of the military academy. And then he was the spy in Identity Crisis, where he killed Leslie Nielsen. He was then in 2 others later on in the resurgence of Columbo. And so he was in a total of 4.
Awesome. I don't know how many he directed, but
I don't either.
But I just recently watched a documentary. There was a gentleman, it was a young guy that he managed to get to interview, and Patrick McGoohan was even heavy-handed at directing these interviews. The documentarian, he'd be like, let's do it right in front of this. And no, this isn't right. Well, you need to do it here. And I want you to walk through like that. He was really controlling. And he did speak about directing Columbo in that, everything I do has to be of a certain quality. This program is of that quality, or at least provides me, I think he said, at least provides me a canvas, a palette, if you will. Chris, fast fingers. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, he, I know that he directed 3 of the 4. He didn't direct the first one he was in Dawn's Early Light, but he directed at least the other 3 that he starred in. And I believe at least 1 or 2 other episodes that he did not star in. So I'm pretty sure it was either 4 or 5. All of the ones that he was in past that first one, because they became friends. Peter Falk and Patrick McGowan became friends on that first episode. And Patrick McGowan, you could start to see a lot of his influence in the later directed episodes that he did. But one thing that always struck me a little funny, just talking about directors, is do you remember the actor Coach from Cheers, the TV show Cheers?
Nicholas Colasano.
Yes, that's it. Well, he directed 2 episodes. One was Etude in Black. So if you picture Coach from Cheers directing Cassavetes and Peter Falk, it's kind of amazing when you think about it. And he directed A Friend Indeed, which are 2 really excellent episodes. I always thought that was kind of funny because he played such a great bumbling character on Cheers. And like, well, you know what? He had the bumbling down pretty good. I guess he had a pretty good handle on the fake bumbling.
Well, and they say that's the mark of a great actor. There's 2 things. If somebody's a really great actor, number 1, it's hard to play an idiot. It's really difficult. And he did that. And it's also hard to play someone you love to hate. And it's additionally hard to play someone you hate, but also like a lot of these Columbo villains.
Yeah. Most of the villains, most of them. Yeah.
Nicholas Colasano was a legendary acting teacher and stage actor and stage director. So when you see him on Coach, there's some brilliance there. There's some real attention to detail, and he was the perfect guy to play that. Now, we've mentioned some of these people, but just a few of the actors that played more than once on Columbo are Jack Cassidy, who we talked about with that. I can just see the smile.
Yes.
She could do it. I can't. My teeth are.
You're always in the neighborhood.
He really does lose it in that one.
And let's see here. Robert Culp, who we all love. Yeah. God, he's so, when you see him on Greatest American Hero or I Spy or any number of other things, he's so different than he is in that just very buttoned up with the glasses on perfectly and the talking to his underling. Oh, man. And here's one that I did not know, Tyne Daly.
Yeah, much later on again. That was in a later episode, but yes,
George Hamilton.
Yeah. That was a good episode.
Oh, man. Ray Milland, Leslie Nielsen, who was the boyfriend in one. I think he was a murder victim in another.
He was.
In Identity Crisis, Patrick McGowan kills him. They're both CIA agents. Yeah.
It's just like Patrick McGowan. Dean Stockwell.
Again,
he was in 2, right?
He was in 2. He was what I'd like to call an innocent survivor. So in 1, he was being framed on, I believe it's Troubled Waters, where Robert Vaughn is on the cruise ship. So he's being framed for murder on that one. And then he was the victim. Robert Culp killed him with a block of ice in a swimming pool in the most crucial game.
You guys, and William Shatner, who I have to say, when I see Dean Stockwell in anything, I just expected him right in the middle of the episode to go, Ziggy says it was but you guys are getting some praise here. Gilman is asking, do you guys talk movies? You two have something.
Oh, thank you.
A certain sick
We certainly talk movies, but just not on a podcast. So maybe we'll have to do that when we run out of Columbo episodes. We might have to do that.
Let's see here. Chris Cheshire says, thank you for that. 4 episodes. Dupa, people are glad to see SG. He hasn't been around there. He's been working a lot. Doc says, but I already subscribed. Don't put me in the closet again, Tom. We've got people missing each other. Coach was a great character. Chris says, I Spy, one of my favorite shows, was very good. And he also says Leonard Nimoy.
Mm-hmm.
Was he in one?
Oh, yeah.
No, he was. I don't think he was in more than one.
I said one episode. Yeah, he was in one, though.
Yeah.
No. He was a great killer in A Stitch in Crime, but
not this.
Not this one. No,
I am going to wear this out. It just made me so hard when I saw it, and it's just great. It's since it's not Kirk,
right?
It's an underling. It's just a regular Joe. You always knew, and this is I didn't invent this, but you always knew when the landing party was Captain Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Lieutenant Gerbenstein.
Yeah. Lieutenant, we never saw you before.
Probably Lieutenant Gerbenstein was not long.
He was going to get turned into a sugar cube or get have all the salt sucked out of his body. Something terrible was going to happen to him.
It says here in my research that 2 episodes were actually based on novels by Ed McBain, who was a famous police procedural novel. The 87th Precinct was his big deal in these novels. And I've read, I think, most of the Ed McBain, and those 2 episodes were No Time to Die and Undercover. And apparently, and you guys can tell me whether this is correct or not, those did not follow the usual inverted story kind of format.
Yeah, you could tell that they were good quality. The 87th Precinct books are good. Ed McBain is a great author, but they were very much not Columbo. Episode 1, he's going undercover to pretend to be in the mafia to try and find a killer. I honestly didn't care for them. Well, again, they're the newer ones, so they're not in the classic ones. So, I think after a while, even a character as wonderful as Columbo, you have an actor who maybe wants to do something a little different. So they had one that was very much a Silence of the Lambs type of episode where Columbo was attending a wedding of a relative and she gets kidnapped by a psychopath and he spends the whole time chasing her down. I'm sure I don't remember the title, but I'm sure it was No Time to Die or something like that. But they're very, very much not episodes of Columbo. It just, again, good stories, but really not my thing.
Yeah, that's there's some series I go, I'm going to pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah. There's very few episodes of Columbo I'll turn off if they're on, but certainly.
Well, one I hated, but then I wound up liking because of our podcast was Dagger of the Mind, where they were the Shakespearean actors putting on Macbeth. I hated that episode always, and I would never ever watch it again except for the fact that we had to record an episode on it. And then I was like, you know what? Now I can appreciate it a little bit.
It wasn't that bad. Yeah,
it's a good
it was
episode.
Great. Yes, Honor Blackman and Richard Basehart, right?
Oh, yes. I'm not going to even mention, Honor Blackman was a big James Bond mixture. And I hate to keep coming back to this, and I did not plan this particular overuse of this image, but there is a legendary episode of Star Trek called Dagger of the Mind.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's the one where Kirk's in a chair and the mind control thing keeps going, and he'll be like, it's so great, William Shatner, because he's like, you'll never get away with completely gorked out. But anyway,
as only he could do.
Yes, as only he could do. Let's see here. Tyne Daly was in Undercover. Doc says he's got to go. Doc Torn, thank you for the $5, and he says I must bow
Thanks
out.
again,
It was
Doc.
Thank
nice
you.
to see you all, Coat family. The
I
Coat
like it.
fam.
I
Now,
like
the
it.
music we talked about earlier, and wow, some of the composers for this show are legendary beyond legendary. Can you guys mention some of those folks, or I'll throw
I
my hat
can't.
in?
If yeah, I have to admit I appreciate and love it, but I don't really know the names of the folks responsible. So if you got them, that'd be great.
Perhaps have you heard of a gentleman named Quincy Jones?
I
Oh.
certainly have. Wow, that's great. Okay.
8 episodes. A
Holy cow.
gentleman by the name of Henry Mancini.
Well, I know he wrote I definitely know he wrote the theme. So, but it
Yes.
Okay.
sounds like he wrote a lot more than that too. So that's terrific. I loved Henry Mancini's music.
And then also Mike Post,
I'm
who
not familiar with
isn't familiar to most people probably, but is one of the biggest TV theme and sound score people of all time. I mean,
Wow.
Mike Post really, those other two guys are, famous for obvious popular music reasons. But Mike Post, I'm just going to pull up his deal here real quickly because it is staggering
Wow.
the amount of shows that you're like totally familiar with what he did. And like nobody knows it. I actually was good friends with his protege. Okay. The White Shadow, Law and Order Special Victims Unit,
Whoa.
the A-Team, NYPD Blue, the Rockford Files, LA Law,
Wow.
Quantum Leap, Magnum PI, Hill Street Blues.
Oh,
I
man.
mean, this guy is the
Everything.
Babe Ruth of TV
Yeah.
theme songs.
Yeah. Holy mackerel.
Yeah. And he did 9 episodes. Now, he did the 89 to 90.
Mhm.
But he did do those. So
But that would make
Wow.
sense because a lot of the shows you listed were in that 80s, that
Right.
golden 80s era of television, A-Team and
Love
you know,
A-Team.
all Rockford Files, late 70s, early 80s. Yes. Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, this is great because I don't know a lot about the composers and the music because I was always a little afraid. I didn't mind, playing small clips of the dialogue from the show, but I was always a little afraid about playing music on the show just in case, I mean, it's not a big channel, but I'd hate to lose it.
As well you should be, because the
Yeah.
only thing that the platforms are liable for is music. That's
Okay.
why the algorithm, I mean, I can play 3 seconds of the Banana Splits theme song and it's a notification. But the other stuff, the Section 230 doesn't allow them to be sued for that. So they're a lot more lax on it. So you're very smart to not play any of the music. As a matter of fact, many of the public domain films that I play and go along on the members only, somebody in Andorra has a copyright to it. I'll get a notification that says, this is copyrighted music in the Dutch Antilles and all these little tiny random countries. But that's how they get their copyright back when it goes in the public domain, is through the music. Now, Columbo was actually a relatively award-winning program as well, correct?
Well, I know Peter Falk got 4 Emmys. I know they won, I believe, for writing on the show. They may have even won for music. I'm not sure. Maybe do you know?
That I don't know. I was just looking at the chat with Ben Gazzara directing 4 episodes. They were all weren't they all in the same circle? Cassavetes, Falk, Ben Gazzara. They were all in the same.
They were all
group,
friends
right?
in circles. Yep.
They're part
Made
of that
movies together.
Gina Rollins, right? Yeah.
Back in the day, New York streets
Yeah.
filmmaking.
Yeah, very gritty. Yep.
And that actors theater they had there as well.
Yes.
And of course, Peter Falk, Only One Eye.
Yeah.
I always wanted Sandy Duncan to do an episode because anyway, it says here 13 Emmys, 2 Golden Globes, and this is a big one for me. 2 Edgar Awards, which the Edgars are, of course, is named after Edgar Allan Poe, and they're given to the very best mystery stuff that exists. And for a TV show, to get an Edgar is gigantic because it is such a literary thing.
Yes. And I think one of them might have even been because they also did the Ellery Queen TV show. So I think it's possible that they even got an Edgar for that as well, which is it's great because the two of them got together, bonding in middle school over the love of Ellery Queen stories, and then years and years and years later, they got to create an Ellery Queen television show, which was just wonderful. I think we had talked about it back with another one of the TV experts that you've had on.
Oh, yes. Ed Robertson.
That's it. Yes.
If you haven't gotten the FBI dossier, please do. It's got a huge introduction from me, which is actually an embarrassing thing more than a thing I'm proud of. When a guy tells you he's written a book about the FBI, the TV show, and you say, I have a theory about that. Have I ever told you about it, Ed? And he goes, yeah, you have. Then he sends you the book and the introduction, like a third of the way down the page. The next whole page is your theory attributed to you, and you didn't remember telling him. And he's just humoring you. Like, yeah, I think you did, Tom. Why don't I send you the book, you idiot? And you can see that Ed's
I seem to recall on pages 2 through 14 your theory that we talked about.
Exactly. And just to show how brilliant you guys are, and also me, the 1971 episode "Murder by the Book," directed by Steven Spielberg, ranked number 16 on TV Guide's 100 greatest television episodes of all time. That's pretty high.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing, really.
Lieutenant Columbo ranked number 7 on its 50 greatest TV characters of all time. So it was rated the third best cop or legal show on Best in TV, the greatest TV shows of our time. TV Guide also included it in the 60 greatest dramas of all time. Writers Guild of America put it in its 101 best TV series, best written TV series of all time. And internationally, did you guys know this? This is bizarre to me. And I did convert the picture, but StreamYard, of course, did not accept my converted picture. There is a statue of Peter Falk with the dog in scratching his head, the whole thing, in Budapest, Hungary.
It's a great statue. It looks better than a lot, sure looks a lot better than the Lucille Ball statue. But
why? According to a 1989 article in the Chicago Tribune, when the production of Columbo stopped and no new episodes could be broadcast in Romania, the government feared that riots could break out. And Peter Falk was asked by the U.S. State Department to record a special announcement to be broadcast on Romanian television. He recounted that story on Late Show with David Letterman.
That's terrific.
Sorry, I always hear the sound of angels in a heavenly choir whenever David Letterman's name is mentioned because he put me through school. And he also repeated in his memoir called Just One More Thing. While the cable containing Falk's speech was released as part of the United States diplomatic cables leak, it's disputed whether riots or protests were imminent. But as I was saying, in the 1920s, renewed popularity of Columbo with much younger audiences has been noted by Slate. The fan page he had on Tumblr was like really picking up attention. Collider and the BBC also said, hey, Columbo is getting more and more and more popular. So anyway, it says here that he appeared as Columbo in an Alias sketch for a TV special. And he also appeared as Columbo. And you guys might have seen this on YouTube. A 1977 Dean Martin roast.
That I did
I
see.
didn't see that.
Yes. Of
yeah,
Frank Sinatra, right?
Yes, of Frank Sinatra. And he comes in as Columbo.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah, he didn't roast him as Peter Falk. He roasted him as Columbo. So
he roasted him as Columbo.
Yeah.
Can we, there's two more things, and then I'm going to let you guys go. You've been so wonderful. And I got to say one more time, in the description for this show is the link to the Rumpled Trench Coat of Columbo podcast page. And go there and subscribe immediately. Hold on.
The old cough button.
Just one more thing. We're going to talk about something unfortunate now.
Yeah.
There's things that are done in the world that we're all unhappy with or disappointed in. And then there's things that are just wrong. Mrs. Columbo. Really?
Yeah, I didn't watch it.
Yeah.
I know of it.
Yeah.
I like the actress.
The actress is great.
I do too.
Right? I like
the
her.
actress is great, but she's in no way how he ever described her. She would have been, she was far too young. People were unsure. Did they get a divorce? What's going on? It was just a shame. It really wasn't a bad show if you watch those episodes and pretend that she's just
a regular
woman, just a person,
detective, a person.
Just a person. Basically, she could have been a young Jessica Fletcher, and it would have been perfectly fine. But no, it was kind of doomed. They had to keep changing the name because people hated the idea. Well, hey, did they get a divorce? The whole point of the show is you never saw his wife. You don't even know. I mean, you kind of know there is one, but you sometimes wonder if there is one. But to then say, hey, here's Mrs. Columbo, and they show the car in the driveway, they show the house. It's like nobody wanted to know any of this. They like the idea. In fact, one of the writers, Link, I believe, said that they wanted Columbo to just be this avenging force, almost like like a Japanese horror movie where the protagonist, who's the murderer, commits some horrific unforgivable act and is then pursued relentlessly by this avenging spirit until they either are caught or give up. And so to take that thought of, we don't want to know anything of him, he just always arrives on a scene, he appears out of nowhere, and then to show you absolutely everything about him, including his wife of all things. And it was just doomed from the start. Anyone who was a fan of Columbo was going to hate the show. Anyone who wasn't a fan probably wouldn't have been lured in by the name. It was a colossal misstep.
They didn't even, as you said, they didn't even like make her as he described her. They didn't even, he's the forgetty one, she's the pay attention-y one, or she's pointing things out. And all they did was like have her emptying the cigar tray, or the car was in the driveway. They ended up changing the title completely to Kate Loves a Mystery. And they changed her last name to Callahan.
And that's why people thought, did they get a divorce? That's why they had the divorce discussion.
I don't want you to be called Columbo anymore. I really just don't. It's just so wrong. But I can just see a TV executive sitting there going, I've got an idea. Mrs. Columbo. Do we want to get into Columbo's first name?
Well, I think we might as well. I think so. It's because it does spark an interesting debate about Trivial Pursuit. So, okay, all right, okay,
I'm
good.
Yes, sit here and
all right. So, his name, it's funny because it's not canon. The writers were furious about this, but on an early episode when he shows his ID, you do see it says Frank Columbo. And they were mad when they saw it. I don't know who made that ID. I don't know who authorized it, but they were not happy about it. But that ID is used more than once, and his name then from that you'd have to say is Frank. However, they what was it? The Trivia Encyclopedia had put out that his name was Philip Colombo because they wanted to put out a trivia trap. They wanted to fool people who were using their intellectual property incorrectly. And so that's why Trivial Pursuit, and I was always mad at this as a kid because I'm like, his name isn't Philip. But in Trivial Pursuit, that one wedge in entertainment said, what is Columbo's first name? And the answer is Philip, and it is not Philip. And it launched a lawsuit, I believe. So that's my knowledge of it. If you wanted to, I don't know if you want to go further.
$300 million.
What?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So they claim that facts are not copyrightable, and there's nothing improper about using improper facts. And it was upheld by the United States Court of Appeals for the 9th District, and they petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court went, yeah, we're going to do Columbo's first name as not happening. Absolutely not happening. Let me see here. Let me get through some of these. Well, this is, where was it? Oh, yeah. Chris Cheshire, who's had a lot of great comments here tonight, says, just reading that Columbo had no theme song, didn't it? Well, yes and no.
It did. It did. It wasn't always consistent, but there was that kind of very Italian-y Casantina type of music that was played sometimes at the beginning. But he's right in the sense that it wasn't like, and it's Columbo time. He didn't have a signature theme that way, but he definitely had, and I believe that was the one that was done by Mancini, was a Italian-y sounding type of music that you would probably recognize if you heard it, but obviously we're not going to play it here.
So I think there's a case to be made that although it's not germane just to Columbo, that the opening of the NBC mystery movie is kind of
that's a classic. Yes.
Every time we get out like the flashlights in Indiana after the tornadoes put the power out, me and my little brothers would just sit there. My dad's coming down the hallway. We'd all be just like, yeah, real funny. Shut up. Yeah. So let's see what else we got here. The Wolf is a huge fan of Rockford, and so I'm just going to put. Isaac Hayes called him Rockfish, which was always hilarious. Listen here, Rockfish. Chris Cheshire says, I was stationed in England, Columbo in the 70s, and he was big. Yeah, he really was.
Big in Japan too. Actually, they released all of this stuff on Blu-ray that was in a nice little fake cigar box, but it's all in Japanese. So I mean they didn't redub the voices, so it's still in English. You could watch it, but it's all subtitled in Japanese. Yeah. Let's
see here. Mrs. Columbo was responsible for the hard-boiled eggs. In one episode, he said that. Yeah.
Yep.
Let's see. Dupa says, I'm so glad I didn't watch it. Like you said, I didn't want to know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure Mrs. Columbo, I have to assume she's referring to.
Yeah. Let's see here.
It's not canon, Dupa Doo. Don't worry about it. The Mrs. Columbo didn't count.
Let's see. Chris Cheshire says Frank, period. That's his name. There's no other answer.
That's it. It's unfortunately no getting around.
Why do I have the feeling that Tom got a Trivial Pursuit answer right, but the card was wrong? That's pretty much the case.
That's fair.
I was dating a girl one time, and her dad hated me, which is not uncommon. And they all wanted. This was when Remember when Trivial Pursuit was the latest, greatest, biggest thing on earth, and everyone was playing. They brought it out and they asked me to play. Now they knew better because I had been on this television show for high school kids called The Brain Game. Every school got kids, and it was 4 people. It was like the College Bowl sort of a thing. And they asked these questions, and I was on it for our school, which was a big school. And she went to the school. They should have known. And
you're good at trivia.
You don't want to play Trivial Pursuit. Because even more than just being on the game, I think it was entertainment had a color and then sports had a color. And I'm like, if it's an entertainment or sports question, I'm going to get it right no matter what. Science, history, literature, forget those. Those are for smart people. I know the entertainment and sports. Oh, no, let's play. 7 minutes later, I was introduced to words I had never heard from a Methodist minister. Anyway, so yeah, I played a lot of Trivial Pursuit. Dupa says there were a couple of Trivial Pursuit cards that had wrong answers. We would have such fights. I'm a little over competitive. Yeah, and they did have some wrong answers, and you would have to get out a secondary source and go, no, here you go. And
yeah.
Wait, did you hear about the Snapple caps? That some of those facts are not factual. And is this why? Do we have an answer as to why?
I guess maybe
they're like Snapple facts,
aren't
right?
Yeah, I don't know.
A Snapple fact checker, I guess.
Let's see. That's Seinfeld episode where they go upstate to get pie, make stop on the way in George's Trivial Pursuit games ends with the bubble boy. Yeah.
That's right. He gets so mad he pops the bubble.
Yeah, gets really mad. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about here. Is there anything about this show that you want people to know that I haven't brought up here? Is there a particular thing you like? Is there something that can you trace the moment you went, oh my gosh, Columbo's the show for me? Or yeah, that's right. The card says moops. And somebody wanted to stick to what was on the card, and yeah. Is there anything else about the show, or perhaps your next upcoming episode that you think is particularly fun or interesting?
Well, we did, like I said, we recorded our conversation of Lovely But Lethal. I just have to now sit down and edit it and release that. And then we're in the process of doing Any Old Port in a Storm. So we're still going in order. And so they'll be, the Lovely But Lethal will hopefully be coming out pretty soon because I have a little time off and can get that done. But I mean, the show, again, just as a very young age, because I don't think we really emphasized how much murder mysteries played a role in our upbringing. I was watching And Then There Were None with my father when I was 5. I was just watching all of the, there's a bunch of murders in that one. So just all the classy
10,
murders, yes, there would have been 10. But so Columbo was just a natural because it was such an excellent high quality program doing something very unique and different with an actor they liked. They liked Peter Falk before he was Columbo. So I think that was just something that it was like, well, this is for me. I like this. In fact, at first I was like, oh, why, wait a minute. Why do we know the killer? What's going on? Why would they show us this? And then, you get it. You realize, oh, that's the whole point, is like, hey, how's he gonna find out? So I would say that's
yeah, I mean, we were raised on Agatha Christie and, just all the mysteries and all the murder mysteries specifically, not even just mysteries, really murder mystery, a lot of murder talk in the household. And, I think for me, it was just, it's, even though the murders are gruesome and awful, it's oddly family friendly. This is something you can watch with your entire family. There's no cursing. There's nothing really lewd in any of them. And so it's just, you just get, for me at least, I got so absorbed into watching Peter Falk as Columbo figure out what we've just seen.
Yeah.
So it's just really intriguing and really engaging.
Our family, I don't know what it was like at your house. My parents had 6 kids in 7 years.
Whoa.
I'm the oldest. And so it was a room full of people. Naturally, the younger ones may not have been necessarily up to speed in 1971 or 73, but our dad pretty much picked what we were going to watch. Now, my mom could lobby for, we're watching Tom Jones. She liked Tom Jones. But she would throw her car keys at the screen. But he picked what we watched. And we watched every NBC mystery movie. That was, there was not even a discussion because he liked it and we loved it too.
Yeah.
And so it was always great. And, you know, people talk about on-demand viewing and, oh, this one's got commercials. The commercials, not really attractive to people nowadays, but the commercials gave you a chance to talk about what had just happened on the show and what was going to happen, and also go to make a biological errand if you had to, or get a
right. Right.
And it was like, it was always great to go, oh, how's he? Because the phone rang in the room and he was in the room. So how could he have? All of that stuff went on. So
you could debate it all during the commercial. Exactly.
It was like group participation kind of show, but that was must-see TV for us. It was unmissable television. Ham Operator says, been trying to ask, is there a remake, reboot, redo in the future for the Columbo franchise? I can't speak for these two, but I hope not.
Yeah.
I think it's like Gone with the Wind. You could try, but you would fail.
I would like to see other shows do a How Catch 'Em.
Right.
But just not be Columbo. Just let it be another detective or another murder mystery author or whoever you want as your main character. I would love to see that type of show. But I think it would be a terrible mistake, and it would be terribly unfair to the actor. I mean, who's gonna do Columbo at this point? Nobody could do it. They'd be constantly compared to Peter Falk, and rightfully so, because again, Columbo is Peter Falk and Peter Falk is Columbo. So it would fall flat. But I would love to see that genre make a comeback, at least a show or two with the How Catch 'Em genre. That'd be great.
Well, and wouldn't they just be doing an imitation of Peter Falk?
That's what you have to say. Like, how would you do Columbo, but not say, oh, one more thing, sir? How do you? Then it's not Columbo, because that's what we know Columbo to be. And so, if you're doing an impression, why do it? You've got the best that ever was at it, and you've got 69 episodes to watch and enjoy of it. Why do that to yourself or an audience? Just, I would hope not Columbo itself, but I would definitely support fully another How Catch 'Em out there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that any time they try to do look, we did Mrs. Columbo, and that was just trying to be in the same universe as Columbo, and that was not great.
Yeah.
And as I don't like that when they do remakes, and as a standalone, they just should remove the title, because a standalone Mrs. Columbo show is a pretty good show, lots of good mysteries, right? But once you start labeling it as Columbo, it's awful. So they definitely should not do a reboot with Columbo involved, because who would it be? Like his grandchild?
Yeah,
right. Or again, if it was a reboot, it would just be Columbo again. They would just start right over from again. Yeah.
In the modern day, which even from a technological standpoint, I mean, I guess maybe once it would be great to go Columbo. Yeah, this TikTok, I don't know my wife, but I just don't really want that. Now, there's some things I would look forward to a reboot of. For instance, if they ever redo The Rifleman, obviously, I would play Lucas McCain. This much is given. If they don't do it that way, then it's going to fail.
Exactly.
But the thing about these 4 shows, now, if we look at Heck Ramsey there, that's the show that kept getting switched out. That's the show that, like, they'd try something for a season or 2, and then they'd have to put another one in, because there was always the strong 3. McCloud, totally a fish out of water story. Totally. It was just, okay, country bumpkin out from the West, from actually New Mexico, I think it was. And the accent and him riding the horse down the main street of New York. Great. And of course, his boss, McCloud. I could do that all day. And then you had Macmillan and Wife, which was kind of like The Thin Man or whatever. It was
okay. Nick and Nora Charles. Yeah, it
was just a husband and wife team, kind of a heart to heart almost. Which came later, but obviously Peter Falk was Columbo, and then Heck Ramsey there was interesting because he was an old school kind of cowboy sheriff, might have been an outlaw at one time. You never really knew. But it was when technology was starting to become a thing. So there was now a telegraph, and there was now fingerprints were starting to be a thing that you could look at under a microscope. So he started employing the very early kind of technology that you wouldn't suspect from Richard Boone or from that character. So it was kind of cool. And everybody always wondered, is Heck Ramsey, is he have gun will travel? Is he Paladin years later under an assumed name? And they make a little sort of veiled references to it. But I think one of the strengths of Columbo was they made him really good because they could.
Yeah.
They had these other shows that they anthologied with it. So they didn't have to make, at the time, they might have been making 34 episodes.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they made 8, 6, whatever it was a season.
Yeah, some seasons only had 6. That was part of the deal that Peter Falk had made, because after that second pilot, NBC was like, "That's it. We've got a show here. Let's get Peter Falk as Columbo," but he didn't want to be tied down to a weekly show because he was still doing movies, and he had a bad experience where he was tied down to a TV show years before then that wouldn't let him get out to do movies. So he was like, "Hey, I'll do this," but I mean, I'm not saying they invented the wheel for him, but I'm saying that was a big draw to get him to agree to do it. And probably some of the other major stars that were doing that as well. I mean, Jack Klugman was in The Odd Couple, and although Quincy wasn't long for the wheel, it did take its spot in the wheel very briefly, and they're like, wow, this is a good enough show that we can just make it its own show.
I stand corrected, Wolf. I did not realize that Quincy had been part of the wheel. I thought it was just, gentlemen, you're about to enter the world of forensic science, and everybody fainting
at the end of it. Yeah, I think it was very brief. Yeah, I think they realized pretty quickly that was going to take off and be a thing. And of course, we talked a few times about Banachek being such a wonderful show. So that's just a great.
Well, the Banachek's just a great example of a show where the owner of the thing. Oh yeah, there you go. George Papard, he just got tired of doing it.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just like, look, I'm a movie star. I get it. I did some shows, but I'm done doing it. But Quincy was just, and you knew he would be there in the parking lot, and it was murder.
It was murder.
It was murder.
I don't know. I know of Quincy. I don't know if I've seen maybe 1 or 2 Quincy's.
Dad wasn't a big fan of Quincy because he didn't like the idea that it was just all about corpses. Like he liked to think the detective work more. And for whatever reason, as much as he loved Jack Klugman, I mean, we watched The Odd Couple every second it was on. 12 Angry Men. I mean, just all these wonderful Jack Klugman shows. But he wasn't a big fan, and so it wasn't on in our house as much.
But I have to say, I didn't watch it. What's it called? The Mystery Wheel? I didn't watch it.
Well, you were too young for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just watched Columbo when it was on reruns on like Channel 11, and they would just show, it wasn't part of the Mystery Wheel. It's just like, here, it's Sunday afternoon, so we're going to show Columbo, and then like Westworld or something. It's just, that's how the day went,
Well, it's to be expected. You're 26 years old. Yeah. Nobody can expect you to have seen that. I think that Banachek, the first one was called A Cool Million, I think was the first one, but Banachek was he was a detective kind of, but he was an insurance claims detective. So his big thing was, I get 10% of whatever I recover. And some of these items were worth $1 million. So he was this very upscale, very, over the top, great thing. But also, Adrian, you have not lived until you have seen the Quincy punk rock episode. There is nothing more unrealistic than the Quincy punk rock episode. It is the worst costuming. It is the worst. It is absolutely hilarious. And it's terrible because Quincy's a really good show. But I mean, it's
no.
just cartoonish and by our eyes today. And as somebody that was kind of a punk rocker, I look at it and just go, oh my God,
That's
are you kidding
embarrassing.
me? And he gives a speech to the crowd at the end that is just, she was one of your friends. She got any humanity. And he's turning around this punk rock audience that I know if I had gone to see the Pistols or anybody else, and the guy got up and did that, he would be up there for 3 seconds and instantly covered with spit and beer bottles. It just was, it's the most hilarious thing that you've ever seen. Now, this is interesting. Chris Cheshire says, my mother was a Burke's Law fan. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Amos Burke or Gene Barry, Gene Barry was on Columbo, wasn't he?
He was in Prescription Murder.
There we go. There we go. Well, Amos Burke was a millionaire that gets named the police commissioner of New York City. He runs for it and gets it. But his big thing was, I'm super rich. And so he's limousined around everywhere, but he solves murders. He's really good at solving murders. So that was his, because see, a lot of the, certainly the NBC mystery movie, but the Quinn Martin stuff as well. All the detectives had to have their thing. Cannon was fat. Barnaby Jones was old. You know, they all had.
There was a blind detective too. I can't remember now, but
that was Longstreet. That was
there. We go.
Tarantino with Bruce Lee as his instructor, because see, Longstreet, even though he was blind, could actually kick your ass because he knew, I don't see, but I've got a cane and can do kung fu. Longstreet was a really great show too. But so they always had this. You could call it a defect, but you could also call it just a personality, a point of departure, which was really great. People are saying the impersonation would be great if someone nailed it. I just think it would be a faint echo. I don't think it would be a James Bond situation where the franchise was so strong that different ways of carrying it out. I think Columbo is a specific type. He's that specific person. And the fact that they allowed him to be Columbo and do Columbo-y things, he just made it that way. I think it would be nearly impossible. And then
I was just going to say, I think it'd be tough to do a reboot too, because the other thing with Columbo is there's not a lot of character development of Columbo. It really is just, each episode is just this mystery and then this mystery and then this mystery. There's really, I mean, sometimes some of the police officers are the same throughout the series, but there's not a lot we know about Columbo beyond what he shows up to the crime scene with. So then I don't know how another actor could kind of tap into that other than just doing an impression of him.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it would be, again, I think it would be very difficult for the actor. I mean, there's been a lot of impersonators, Kevin Pollak famously. There's a lot of great Columbo impersonators, but it's just an impression. And I think it would just constantly take you out of it. Every moment you're watching it, you're thinking, hey, that's a good Columbo impression, instead of, hey, how's Columbo going to get this guy? Like I said, I love the genre. I would love to see more shows like that. But I just think it would be very difficult for an actor to try and do Columbo.
Yeah. Chris Cheshire says, but look at MASH TV show against movie, which was better. I think that's a different thing, because MASH, the movie, as popular as it was, the TV show came out not super long after, but long enough after. And it was half an hour without a laugh track, or maybe it did have a laugh track the first season.
Sometimes it did, and sometimes it didn't. Early on, it did.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think that was an ensemble versus one guy. I think it might have been a little easier. And by the way, there was at least, wasn't there? I think Radar was in both of them. And there might have been another character or two, some secondary characters. So, but that is a good point. I mean, I think MASH is its own thing. This is an extremely interesting question by Ham Operator. What is the one real crime that Columbo would have solved? JonBenet, Chandra Levy, which
Yeah.
I think Chandra Levy was solved and unsolved and solved again.
Resolved. Yeah, they did.
I do think, again, I know you listed a couple, we could go outside that, but I would say he would have solved the John Benet Ramsey thing. I think he would have been on top of it. I think he would have solved definitively the OJ trial, OJ murders. And he
OJ
might even
would have been a prototypical villain for him.
Yeah,
too.
That's perfect.
That
Yes.
would have been a really good episode, except that it involved real human death and tragedy. But that really would have been a good episode of Columbo.
Well, Aaron Hernandez too, honestly.
Yeah.
Such a double life there. I think this is like a real, there's one that's unsolved that is really tough. It's the yogurt shop murders. I don't know. It's pretty tragic. This is a whole true crime episode, but it's rough. But I think he would have gotten that one because no one can figure that one out.
Here's the one I think, and he probably should have solved this one. Barbara Colby.
Yeah. Yep.
That would have been the one.
Yep, absolutely.
That would have been the one.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Paladin's real name was Clay Alexander. I did not know that. Now I have all the Paladins from radio as well. So,
oh wow.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I have a sickness. Let's see. Ham Opera says, and it was murder. Sam. Here's the thing about Quincy. It should have been called Quincy and Sam. Because Quincy was constantly, Sam, get those 3 bodies done and I'll be back and going on the yacht, whatever. Let's see, later, Ellery Queen.
Yep. Fantastic show. I love that.
This one, Yo Six OC. Yo
Six Society. We don't want to be no scapegoat.
Yeah, it's so funny. You've got to see the punk rock episode of Quincy.
That's what that's from.
It is. Oh my God. It set punk that ended punk rock. That was the thing that ended it right there. The NBC mystery movie lasted 6 seasons, 71 to 77. The one great thing about even the Columbo first season that I have is that I think it has an episode, or maybe this is my McLeod. There's an episode or 2 of other NBC mystery shows on it, and it's always McMillan and Wife. They throw a McMillan and Wife in there, which admittedly I wasn't as crazy about, but having watched it in more recent years, there is a lot of chemistry between Rock Hudson and Jill Susan St. James, which shows you what a great actor Rock Hudson was.
Yes.
Let me see, a Quinn Martin production. Those were great. Amos Burke was 180 from Columbo. Yeah, he was always very, he could speak foreign languages. They'd run into some Dutch supermodel and he'd be, he was very knowledgeable about a lot of things.
And that's a great point that he brings up, is that a lot of Columbo is fish out of water, like you said. McLeod was always the wealthy socialite, the famous person, the wealthy businessman, and this working class schlub that would come on in. And one of the influences for Columbo was Crime and Punishment, the detective in that, who was just this working man detective, and that the murderer was a college student, which at the time that book was written would have been an elite position to be in. To have a wealthy, worldly detective would definitely be a very much different from Columbo being so grounded.
Yeah. I always like it when somebody will be like, maybe it's the episode with Martin Landau, but they'll give him some food or whatever, and then he's just wolfing it down. And, actually, that would about a $400 plate of delicious, whatever it is,
caviar from the Beluga.
Walking across something, and it's like Lieutenant. The groundskeeper is just, that this is a temple that hasn't been set foot on in 300 years. Something, he was
always a movie set. He was constantly walking in, room shots.
This, I don't know how familiar you guys are with this, but I have to really echo these sentiments quite a bit. And we are going to do a show on this show. And by the way, anytime we do a show on a show, you guys are both welcome back. You're just awesome.
Thanks.
And by
Thank
the
you
way,
so much.
in the description for this show is the link to Rumpled Trench Coat, a Columbo podcast on YouTube. You have no choice. If you don't, I will come to your house and do my Columbo impersonation for as long as it takes for you to just subscribe to that particular program. And it's fabulous. Watch an episode, listen to an episode. Watch an episode, listen to an episode. You'll be glad you did. Metal Maiden Vicky says, I wish more seasons of Coal Shack, the Night Stalker. And oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, huge inspiration for the X-Files. The creator of the X-Files flat out admitted, he said, yeah, Kolchak was a gigantic inspiration. Just a great show. I echo that completely, Vicky. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see what we got here. Going back to Columbo reboot, which Ham Operator, he's not going to let it go. He wants a Columbo reboot. He says, I bet companies like Netflix would find a way to switch up the character. I think that's a natural motivation to want to see the things that you love begin to become anew. What I would say is this, is as much as we all want that, and I think we all want that if it could happen, I would like to see them come up with new things that we love as much as Columbo, more than a reboot of Columbo. Mm-hmm. Because there are 100 and how many episodes?
It's only 69. And that counts all the new ones too.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought there were more than that. I thought I added it up and it was more with the new ones, but I've been wrong before.
I might be off on that, but I know there's not many.
But there's let's say there's 69, which that's a lot. That's more episodes than Star Trek. Not by many, but it is more. And you can rewatch them and they don't get old. And
they don't get old.
I am a person that will rewatch a series. I mean, come on. I'm at episode 429 of Dark Shadows, for crying out loud. An episode. Chris Cheshire says there was a show with Peter playing Columbo and Sammy Davis Jr. playing Columbo. I'm thinking Laugh-In, but I doubt it. Well, maybe. You mean like a skit, I guess.
Laugh-In sounds like it could. I mean, that'd be about the right time period, the right people in it. That could be Laugh-In.
I think Laugh-In was a little sooner, but it might have lasted long enough to have been Columbo-ish. Metal Man Vicky says only one season of Kolchak the Night Stalker, which also was a show that started off as made-for-TV movie, and it might have been over 2 seasons, and because it was very sporadic, that it was a very difficult show to watch because it wasn't always at the same time and on a regular basis. Let's see. Simon Oakland ended up there. Always great. Any thoughts on the passing of David Lynch?
Oh, I love David Lynch.
Yeah. Again, it's said. I mean, he obviously was an older man, and so
he's a smoker.
But a lifelong
Famously.
Smoker, and I mean, did great stuff. I don't think all of it was quite for me.
Twin Peaks was so ahead of its time. Can you believe that show aired on network television in the 90s? Like it's so ahead of its time. I love Twin Peaks. I love David Lynch. I love almost all of his stuff.
Which of the David Lynch films would Columbo have been the best in? I'm thinking.
Well, he clearly would have solved the Twin Peaks mystery. I don't know, and he would not have gotten possessed by Bob. So
I do not think there was a place for him in Eraserhead.
Right.
But I think Lost Highway, maybe. I don't know.
There was that. He did that recently with that monkey where he was interviewing a spider monkey, interrogating a spider monkey. What is the name of that? David Lynch did it, but Columbo could have done that.
Oh no!
Yeah, I love Twin Peaks.
Yeah, Twin Peaks is really great.
The log lady is my everything. I love her.
Well, speaking of really great, you guys have both been really great.
Thank you.
Your support of this show has just been incredible. We got to get you guys over a certain number of view hours so that you can get monetized. Again, I'm saying unto thee, do you have a store yet with your logo?
Well, it's very funny. I did go on Cafe Press like you recommended.
Uh-huh.
And I got it's set up so it's on. I thought golf balls would be funny because of that Golf Pro episode, but also mugs and T-shirts and things like that. But when I go to the store and put in Rumpled Trench Coat, only the mug shows up, and they show the side of the mug that doesn't have the logo on it. So you have to purposely click on it and slide it over. So I think the real issue is I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But if you search T-shirts in Rumpled Trench Coat, you'll actually see that. If you search mugs,
you have to send them to your store. There's a link where all of your stuff will appear. But what you have to do with the mug, because I have to do it too, you have to make a piece of art that wraps. So there's a logo on each side.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, and there is a way to show the other side, but yeah, it's a pain in the rear end. But you guys have such a great logo, and I think people would really like to buy your stuff that way. But I'm swearing I will haunt you in your grave if you do not go to the description for this show right now. Click on the link to Rumpled Trench Coat, a Columbo podcast YouTube page, and subscribe to it this very minute. I would really like to know if you guys are ever going to do a live episode.
We've talked about it.
Now, we have talked about it.
You can do a watch along because
no, that was definitely the music. Everything is all heavily copyrighted.
But you guys could do a live. Maybe I don't know.
You know what we may do. We had kicked this idea around and almost did, and partially recorded and then abandoned. But we were going to, at the end of every season, do something like all the little lost, all the odds and ends, or something like that.
Yeah,
or
all the little things. It was all the little things. Yeah.
And so that would just be either facts that we wanted to mention but got cut out or didn't get a chance to for each season, bit by bit, and then we never did it. So that might actually be a fun one to do live. So we might do that.
I've got an idea.
Okay.
It doesn't happen very often, so you should.
Wait, I've got a pen here.
The deal is, you have to somewhere here. You get the feeling it's not even a pen; it's one of those golf pencils that doesn't have an eraser.
Yeah. Well, because he always asks for a pencil. He never actually asks for a pen. It's always, I got a pencil.
And you also get the feeling it's on the back of a receipt. So you do season by season. Sort of an Academy Awards, and you guys figure out the categories, but best villain, best solution, best.
Okay, I like it.
Good.
I'm creepy, so I'd do best murder.
Oh, sure.
Best plot, you could do smuggest villain, but you could have all of your own categories that you pick, and then you discuss those, and people in the room
can chime in with their own
to vote.
I'm jotting that down. I got that right here.
Like I always say, you guys get to vote, but if I don't like the way you voted, then
you get to overrule.
Overrule it. I've only done it once, I think, but I have done it.
I like that a lot. I think we may do that, and I think it would lend itself to a live show better than some other things might. So, all right, I may have to steal that.
I think people would love it. I think you could do StreamYard, and you could do it to Twitter and to YouTube or whatever else you want to do. But I would watch it. Let me know when it's on.
Okay.
Let me know if you need any pointers, anything I can help with, because I'm a tremendous fan of your show. You've been so great to this show. You brought your almost embarrassingly younger sister on the program, which was very nice. And you guys do, as people were saying, you got an amazing chemistry. And Adrian,
I've known her a while. Yeah.
She's not just along for the ride,
No, not at all.
As much an expert as you are. So it's great to, get the back and forth. You're obviously well informed. She's got a very mod for the youngsters, hipped up, streeted up for the kids color of headphone, which I believe means that she has that Riz
Yeah,
saying,
very nice.
that's what they're saying. I don't know. Yes, people love that. I've known her a while. She says Frank Booth was so creepy. That must be a Twin Peaks reference, or maybe it's a Blue Velvet reference. By the way, Ham Operator says, love the suit and tie.
No, thanks. I did myself a disservice. I couldn't bring myself to get a beige one. I'm just, too New York for that. So I like to pretend that this is, if Columbo was in Manhattan, that's kind of, instead of the brown and the beige.
Raymond was creepy as well. I'm just going to go ahead and say yes to that. I don't know who Raymond is. I have a parka, but it's blue. It's so beat up and stuff. I thought maybe, but then I said, no, that's way too much. I just wore the family crest. And
so, there you go.
Oh, yeah. Let's see what we got here. I can't take it off here. We got the Team Gully. There it is.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, it's a fishing tournament.
Nice.
Yeah, I mentioned Indiana. Don't ask. We got a t-shirt. You got sweatshirts for the fishing tournament. Great. Are we gonna get hats when we shuck corn? But anyway, you guys have been so fabulous. And again, Rich, thank you for supporting the show.
Oh, of course,
Adrian, I doubt we'll ever see you here again. You look smarter than Rich is. But anytime either of you would like to come back and talk about any program that you do. Oh, here's the last final question.
Sure.
When you're done with Columbo, what are you moving on to?
Oh, that is a good question. That is a good question. I don't know. We have very different. Someone asked about movies earlier. We have very different movie tastes. I'm almost exclusively horror movies. We have a little crossover there.
Yeah. We have a little crossover in the older school horror movies.
Right. But then Rich is way into the musicals, right?
I mean, pretty much. I'm into the horror musicals.
Oh, Rocky Horror.
So yeah, exactly. That's just the one. I mean, that's basically all there is. So, it is true. I'm very much more for the thriller. I mean, again, and then There Were None, I know is from an early age, but that's really my style of that kind of classic thriller murder. Third Man, just all these older school. The Big Clock, which we had mentioned, or I had mentioned as my one more thing for Death Lends a Hand, because they basically stole the script for that with Ray Milland in it. We'd have to think either a show or just simply movies. I mean, I would vote for Banachek, but I don't know that there's enough interest necessarily for that. I would almost think it might be fun to just go through the mystery wheel and not necessarily go episode by episode, but to say, all right, this time let's talk about McLeod. This time let's talk about Banachek. Maybe do something like that.
That's a good idea.
Did you
Any
guys
requests?
ever think about true crime?
She would love
true
crime.
Yeah.
To me, I always quote the movie Sleuth with Michael Caine and Laurence Olivier, where at the end of it, Olivier says, "You can't make a game out of real murder." To me, it's not as much fun when it's real, but I get it. I get the.
You know what it is? It's not necessarily fun, but it's the mystery of it again. It's just a real life mystery. That's really what it is. Yeah.
Adrian, the Cold Podcast.
Oh yeah.
Have you been there yet? Oh yeah, poor Susan Powell. Yeah, she's the Barbara Colby of the Mormons. So
the worst husband.
I think your idea about doing the rest of the mystery wheel is pretty good.
That's a good idea.
At least a place to start,
They're not, I'll just go ahead and say it. They're not all, it's like I've never seen a bad Columbo.
Right.
Right.
There are some episodes of the other ones that are admittedly, I won't say flat, but they're just not as good for whatever reason. But the really good McLeods are pretty awesome. And the really good Macmillan and Wives are pretty awesome. And there was a few in there. And Quincy, other than the very unfortunate episode, which was, I don't understand this music. It's not even music, Sam. Now the kids seem to like it. Anyway.
Like they would stop playing when this old man got up on stage. Like, oh, hold on a second. He's asking us politely.
But let's not jump the gun. You guys are at which episode are you on?
Oh.
Well, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of episodes.
We have a lot to go through.
I mean, we put out an episode roughly like you could put notifications on when you subscribe to us. You'll never get bothered because by the time we get one out, we have them at a roughly once every 3 months, just because our schedules are impossible. So when we have some time off, we try and record a couple, and then I edit them and release them like that. So our next one to come out, if you wanted to prepare and people watch, is the first one from season 3, Lovely But Lethal, with Martin Sheen and Vincent Price and of course Vera Miles. So just a really great good episode of Columbo that I think we'd really enjoy. I think people enjoy listening to our take on that anyway too.
I messed that up. Susan St. James. I'm stupid. All right. Well, you guys, thank you so much again for taking the time. And again, you must go to the description. You must click on the link for Rumpled Trench Coat, a Columbo podcast. You guys all love Rumpled Trench Coat in this chat room. And he's been very, very supportive of the show. Even if he hadn't, all he's got to do is come in here and just make the remarks and jokes that he does. That's enough. That is enough.
Thank you.
I realize that Adrian can't be here that often. It's her junior year of college, and she's very busy. So you guys just please go support Rumpled and his show. And again, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having us. This was a wonderful time. I can't believe that time flew the way it did. At least for us. I don't know about the people watching, but at least for us, it was a great time. And thank you so much for having me on. As you know, I'm a big fan of your show. It's my pleasure to continue to support it. And I love all the folks chatting in there. I'll have to. I know you said I shouldn't look, but I may not be able to help myself. I might have to go back and watch after it's. After on repeat
and
on this
thank
episode.
you as well, Adrian. As you heard, your brother is a big fan of this show, which means he has a problem. I don't know if an intervention is appropriate immediately after the holidays, but it just might be.
Well, thank you so much for
fan.
No, I was going to say thank you for having me on the show too. I checked out your Phil Hartman episode because I do heart Phil Hartman, so that's how I looked into this. So thank you so much. I'll be a fan of the show.
Just privately, if you say it in public, people start unfriending you. It's kind of like being canceled. Anyway, I'm going to be listening. I'm going to be checking you out, and please do that live. Okay.
I like that idea. I like that a lot. Yeah.
I'll just tell you, you're going to do a live, and your first live is going to have your family and another person, and you're going to go, oh, this is really disappointing. It doesn't matter. Leave it up there. People will watch it. If it says the 2005 Rumpleds or end of season 1 Trench Coat Awards or whatever, leave it there. Leave it there. People will watch it. They will. Over time, they will watch it. Don't be discouraged. It takes a long time. I do shows that I'm like, this is a great topic. It's really perfect for our show. People are really going to like it. It's a dud. And then I'll do one that's like, just throw away whatever. And it's gangbusters, but it just takes time. So thank you all again. And you have a fine evening. And unless you have just one more thing, I will bid you adieu.
Well, now I'm annoyed at myself. I didn't think of one, or I would have interrupted you and said, oh, well, one more thing. Well, one more thing. Thank you very much again for having us on. Had a great time. And, I'll pop on back into chat where I feel more at home.
This will be over in 90 seconds.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks again, Tom. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Man, those guys are so great. I don't deserve guests like that. Do we have anything else? Oh, Metalman Vicky says, thank you, Rich and Adrian. And yes, thank you very much. Oh, Gilman says, I'm going to light this cigar for RTC. So there you go. The Wolf. Oh boy. High praise indeed. He doesn't compliment anything. Not even himself. He says, thank you guys. Very cool. Yes. Oh boy, this was better than I thought it was going to be. And I thought it was going to be great. So, wait, Dupa. Oh, nice to see you, Dupa, by the way. Says, one of my favorite Tom Gully episodes. Great show tonight. Thanks, Tom, Rich, and Adrian. Well, don't thank me. They did all the work. And again, go to the description for this show. Click the link for Rumpled Trench Coat, a Columbo podcast. If you don't, warts will grow on parts of your body that you don't want warts growing on. Trust me. Anyway, I'm looking at that old clock on the wall, and like the Reverend Al Green, I'm going to have to get on up out of here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So I think the only thing left to say is, till next time, we're going to get that off of there. Till next time, we'll see you next time.